Hello everybody and welcome to the pull list for the week of July 2nd, 2025. Yes, we're still a few weeks behind, and don't adjust your streaming screens because it is I, Krisis, and you are having me, a crisis. Oh my gosh, echoing. Wow. Live from New Zealand on a particularly lovely Monday morning here, probably a Sunday for you. So as you all know, I'm going to go through all the comics that were out this release week. It actually wasn't a ton, so this is actually going to be a relatively quick show. Usually at the beginning, I'm talking about my power rankings of the year, but we are on the verge, I swear, of me talking about the best comic series of 2025 so far in a separate stream. So we are not going to talk about the rankings of my top series of the week for just one more week. Instead, we're going to dive right into my picks of the week, and that's not how the window's supposed to work. There we go. And my picks of the week are the things I anticipated I would like the most, and then what I actually liked the most once I arrived at my reading. So let's see what they were. For DC, I thought my pick of the week was going to be Birds of Prey. It wasn't the strongest week of DC for me, but Birds of Prey is a book that I really, really love by Kelly Thompson, and I thought, hey, more adventures, kind of closing in on the end of the arc, it's going to be great. Well, it was fine, but there was one specific problem about it that we will be talking about. It had nothing to do with Eisner winner Kelly Thompson. No, so instead, in a shock, I think probably my favorite issue of Batgirl so far by Tate Brombal. I've just really, really been sucked into this series all of a sudden after being a major hater of the first bit. Then at Marvel, I thought my top pick of the week was going to be Wolverines and Deadpools because I love this run from Cody Ziegler and I love all these characters. It was great and I did love it. But I just found so fascinating Chip Zdarsky's first #1 of Captain America set just a week after he is unfrozen from the ice. I cannot wait to talk to you more about that a little bit later. For Image, it was a very slim Image release week. I thought perhaps I would like this new #1, Gehenna, about a assassin that's kind of got like a little bit of a Punisher quality to her. It was not a book that I loved, and so I'm just going by default with G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, although I really did love the art in particular in this by Paul Pelletier. We'll talk about it more later. And my indie pick of the week, there were like 3 indie books this week. It was a very, very slim week. I think this is the 4th of July holiday. And so I thought I would like Lady Baltimore the best. If you remember, I liked the #1 a lot a couple of weeks ago. And it was the best, although certainly not one of my favorite comics of the week, but a finely made comic, and we will talk about that later. So if you've been missing my running over the top series for me of the year so far, there will be, as I said, a separate stream of that. I thought it was going to happen last week, but last week just turned out to be a kooky week, so it's just going to be this week, or whenever it is. That's what it will be. I'm just going to catch a couple of your comments, which means first I'm going to have to give myself a face reveal because I can't see anything without my glasses. Okay, we did some things today. It is a face, a human face perhaps. So let's check in. Super Jop with the first comment last night when I first put up the stream, saying another week, another crisis. And Logan Wayne checking in as well. One of our most regular of regulars is Cedric. And Ellen, bonsoir to you. Okay, let's see who else. Jamie C47 saying hello to everyone in the chat. Yona Paul's saying, why read comics when you could read these lovely comments, which is sometimes a trap I fall into because there was one more book I was thinking about reading last night. But no, I just read the comments and then fell asleep. Mall360, yes, I'm slowly catching up. We're holding at about a month behind right now, and I am comfortable with that at the moment. Although I do want to be caught up to what's new because I think it's fun to get to talk about the newest comments out there. Drink for your first drink of the evening. But I am excited to be a little bit more caught up. Edwin Billiot saying hello to the Crushers and wishing everyone a good week. Cruel Angel was also excited about Batgirl, so we're going to connect about that for the first time today, since I have not particularly been excited about it thus far. And perhaps Cruel Angel can ready their review of Arcana Royale, which I do not read because it is by Jeff Lemire, not a favorite of mine, and Absolute Green Lantern, which I did read, and it's by Jeff Lemire, and it is not a favorite of mine. Cruel Angel giving us a little preview of how that discussion is going to go by saying, I decided to drop Absolute Green Lantern, so there you go. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to work on some settings here that are not settings or not setting. Let's see who else. Ryan Bragg saying hello. Kane, who I was chatting with about our hometown comics like Zenoscope and Dynamite over the weekend, both in the Philly, New Jersey area. James Abel saying hello. Stoops, Anime, what's up all? Superjob, very interested in my thoughts about that Cap issue. Pope Romero, who's almost has now, I think, the ability to change his to change his name back to what it originally was, but maybe he's just identifying as Pope Romero now. We don't know. We don't know that. That could be happening for him. The great Gonzo is here. Saz Murph saying hello. JC is watching us on mobile today because sent off the laptop for repairs. I know that struggle, and all of my regular viewers here, including you, know that this laptop is on its, as I say, death legs. I know the actual saying is deathbed. I just have a malapropism that I say that is death legs, and that's where it is right now. So, gosh, my settings are all messed up today. And no, I didn't throw out the entire top 20. I have a lot of top things to talk about. I just don't want to totally spoiler the list of like top comics of the year that I'm gonna do. And so I don't want to like totally ruin what the countdown will be, although those of you who watch me regularly know. And so I just didn't want to ruin it. And Michael Wesleus is here as well. Okay. So hello to all the regulars. Hello if you happen to not be a regular, and I still wish you a fond hello. Even if you are not one of the people specifically saying hi in the chat, you don't have to say hi in the chat to be welcome here. So I am Krisis with a K. I've been forgetting to like fully introduce myself lately because I think we have so many regulars, but I have been writing a website called crushingkrisis.com. For 25 years as of a few weeks from now. Actually, as of exactly a month from now. And then 15 years ago, I started comic book guides on that site. And so now there are comic book guides on that site. And that has been going on for 15 years, and it's where you can find so many guides, so many things. You know, I wander the wilds of the internet, looking at being a part of comic book discussions, answering comic book questions, because I love comic books, and that's what I do when I'm kind of like tired at night and I can't read any more comics. And so many of the questions out there, the answer is just look on Crushing Krisis. People are like, where does the Mark Waid Fantastic Four begin? How has Jim Balin's Catwoman been collected? You know, how many miniseries were the beginning of the Energon universe before the G.I. Joe book kicked in? All of that is on Crushing Krisis and can be found there, and it explains it all. And that's the reason I did it, because at the time I was just on so many forums and things, and I was just seeing the same, and I just wanted to figure out how to collect all of Uncanny X-Men. Like that was my villain origin story. But I just was like, I can't believe there are all these questions out there and nobody knows the answers, and that people are still like asking the question over and over and over again in a way that I was like, surely somebody's written this down at this point. Surely somebody has a more permanent answer. Surely it's not just somebody asking the forum the same question again and again, searching for the same thing on Google again and again, asking Reddit again and again. But yet, 15 years later, that's still the case. So there's still room in the world for crushingkrisis.com. Okay, now we are going to move on to our moment of crisis. I think I have one this week, which is awards, because this weekend was the weekend of San Diego Comic-Con. Perhaps some of our regular viewers are still there on the Sunday, although it's kind of late in the day at this point. And this San Diego Comic-Con brings with it one of the biggest awards in all of comics, which is the Eisner Awards. And so many books were nominated and won. This is not really an award ceremony that is only oriented to the kind of books that we talk about on the show, the American floppy comics market, which is what I usually say I'm reading all of, because it all awards every kind of comic, and there's really only a few categories where the creators and the books that we know and love from these books turn up, like best ongoing series, best limited series, best new series, and then of course things like penciler, colorist, letterer. So some of our big faves won. Absolute Wonder Woman took home best new series, beating its brother in the Absolute line, Absolute Batman, so that was pretty cool. We also saw Jordi Belair take home colorist. Clayton Cowles, whose name we say many times on the screen, is a letterer, and he got his first ever Eisner win for best letterer, which is crazy. He's one of the best and most accomplished letterers in the industry. But then there's a lot of things that I had my eyes open to, and a lot of things that I don't particularly care for that won as well. I was kind of shocked by the winner of best continuing series, The Santos Sisters, which is not a book I rate particularly highly. I haven't even reviewed it because I haven't seen individual issues. I only read a little bit of it in collection. It's from Fantagraphics. And so yeah, really. And Bickwith Evely won for best penciler inker because, but she won for a series that she's doing with Tom King, which I will not touch with a 10-foot foal, a tiny foal. I won't touch it with a foal or a pole. So But this made me think about just awards in general and what is the value of awards and who are they for? Because I was thinking back to the days when I was a voracious media consumer, primarily of like TV and music, which I don't consume very much TV anymore, although I still do love award season. And at the time, and at many times, there's kind of a crossover between what's critically popular and what's popularly popular, and also like what's edgy and cool, right? And sometimes there's this perfect trifecta when all of the things align. Happy because the critics like the thing the people like, and it's also the thing that's kind of like neat and cool. So I would not classify Everybody Loves Raymond in that category. Not that I'm saying it's a bad show, I'm saying I don't think that's the intersection of coolness necessarily. But like when something like Severance picks up so many nominations at the Emmys this year, not that Severance is necessarily the best show on TV, but that's a really fun crossover of like, wow, critics like it, fans like it, and it's like this cool kind of like not for everybody, weird, kind of sci-fi, kind of underground thing, and it's achieved massive success. And I've seen that happen in music too. There's some years that the weird music actually gets recognition and catches on, and there's some years that the weird music gets totally ignored, and you go and watch the Grammys, and you're like, this is not what was good this year at all. But part of that is because of the way different awards are structured, right? It's the Academy. The Academy is something when they start an acceptance speech on these televised awards. And when you're thanking the Academy, it tends to mean that you were nominated and voted on by a group of industry professionals, some of whom are peers and some of whom are different parts of the industry. And so to watch somebody win a Grammy, we always have to think like, yeah, all the people working in the music industry are fans, but they are also music professionals, and they might be looking for different qualities in music that they would award than we would necessarily as people who are primarily consuming that music as fans. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But that does sometimes explain why that critical sentiment and fan sentiment and then also cool factor don't always completely intersect. And so the Eisners have a judging body, and then they also have a voting public, and that is of comic book professionals. And so yeah, sometimes the comic book professionals award different things. Looking back a couple of years, Stan Sakai won for his lettering of Usagi Yojimbo, which looks like garbage, but he won because he's Stan Sakai and he letters his own comic that he also draws, and that's pretty cool. But it was not the best lettering, nor will it ever be the best lettering in the industry, but it was awarded because what they awarded, as opposed to other kinds of awards, which are popularity or even sales awards, right? There's the American Music Awards, which I believe is a sales-oriented award, if memory serves correctly, and there's lots of things that are like, you know, especially cable TV, like Nickelodeon type awards in the past, which all the fans vote on. And so the reason I've been thinking about this is, should we get upset when our faves don't win? And does it mean that it wasn't the best thing that happened that year? Now, Absolute Wonder Woman, I think it truly was one of the few best new series of last year. So I can hardly argue with that sentiment and that win, nor would I want to. And of course, we celebrate every time that Kelly Thompson gets any kind of recognition in this house. We love to see it. But, you know, I was looking at best limited series, and I forget what limited series won, but off the top of my head. But you know what was not nominated that absolutely came out in the nominating period was Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. And Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, I think everybody would agree, was the biggest smash hit of last year. Everybody would agree that everybody's talking about it. It was nominatable, but I think that one kind of was still flying a little under the radar, and I don't think it kind of hit critical sentiment. I think it was still kind of hitting critical mass when the Eisner nominations opened, and so it didn't get nominated. Now, does that make that not the best limited series from last year? No. It was the best limited series last year. It's not necessarily my favorite limited series of last year, but it is definitely... Ooh, you guys are saying sound is dipping out. Oh boy, I hate to interrupt a moment of crisis, but maybe I just have to hit reload real quick. Okay, I'm going to reload, hit pause a moment of crisis, and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. I think this should be better. There were some settings in the background that were just not looking right. And I think they're looking more right now. So hopefully this is better and more okay. Okay, so where were we leaving off? Oh, so just because things didn't get nominated. And another thing is Best New Series and both Best Continuing Series, I kind of thought Power Fantasy was, at least last year. I'm not as impressed with the second arc this year. And that was not nominated either. So does that mean those things weren't the best? No. Does it mean Clayton Cowles was not the best letterer because he never won Best Letterer before? No, that's absurd. And so I just think that we have to remember who awards are for, which is that, and who they're being voted on for. But then also, like, what is the lag time, right? And when you look at something like Chappell Roan, who I love, although I think her album is mixed like dog shit, I love the songs, I love the performer, and she hit that critical mass at the perfect time. Like, her album came out actually at the end of 2023, which is the beginning of the nominating period, but then she had a massive, massive hit in June and July last year, and then was selling out all of these huge festivals and getting upgraded to the main stage. And then that hit kind of persisted through the fall, and then she was on Saturday Night Live in the fall. You know, that's why people say there's an awards campaign. I mean, for the Oscars, people have it down to a science, the way they campaign for the Oscars, so that they kind of like ramp up to the nominating period so they're top of mind for everybody. And I just don't know if there is that for the Eisners. Like, I'm not a comic professional, so I would have no idea. I truly don't know if anybody kind of campaigns and thinks about like getting their trade out so that people see the trade just in time for the Eisner voting to begin. I truly don't know if that is a phenomenon. But I guess I was just thinking about, it was funny because I am working in the background on what is much harder than I thought it would be, which is putting together a way to present on video my top 60 comics of the year so far. And that's for this year, of course, so it's not what the Eisners were voting on. But I was just thinking, like, I'm sure that a lot of the things that are my favorite comics of this year would never be absolutely glanced at all by the Eisners. And part of that is because a lot of them are big two, and there's a limited number of big two things that get nominated for these big types of awards. But also, like, that's kind of my villain origin story and why I started listening to every song and listening and reading every comic, but then kind of gave up on movies because I don't always trust the awards or the critics or whatever, because I'm like, is your sample size big enough? And for awards, generally, the idea is the sample size is everything, but that's hard in an industry like comic books where there are over 80 new floppy comics usually coming out any given week. And so in movies, for the Oscars, I mean, there's not an infinite number of movies. There are people out there who see every wide release movie that comes out in a year, every movie that's eligible for an Oscar. It can be done. I know people personally who do that. And so the Oscars, although they certainly overlook things and performances and good movies that we look back later and go, well, that was clearly the best of the year, the Oscars have a pretty wide spread. They really do capture just about everything in what they consider, even if they don't nominate everything. But that's just not the case in the Grammys, in anything like comic books where there are so many thousands of things, so many small press books being put out. It's really, really reliant on things gaining momentum and kind of gaining fanfare. And the Oscars are too, but it's a much more contained amount of things. And so you can kind of assume that like everybody's seen everything, and the people who drum up this fanfare kind of like all have a chance at getting their thing noticed. And so that's what really was my villain origin story, because I was like, well, there's no point in watching every movie. Not that the Oscars are always right, but I'll find out from the Oscars and the writing about the Oscars if I missed some movie that was great that I would like. With music, the Grammys barely even touch a lot of the music that I love, and there are certain years that like women never got nominated in the main characters categories, and I primarily listen to female singers, so I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to listen to everything, because the Grammys and what Rolling Stone likes and what certain websites like are not recommending to me the music that I know that I love. Like, I was just jamming to Remy Wolf right before starting the stream, which is definitely my favorite album of last year. I have yet to see anybody put that on their top albums list. It was not nominated for Grammys, I don't think, that I saw. My friend Thomas was just like, you'll love this. That's the only way that I knew what it was. And to me, every album that I heard last year, other than that, pales in comparison. But it wasn't nominated, and so I had to go and find it myself. And that's kind of how I feel about comics, and especially why I get so excited to bring to you this stream, and why I always want to get better at describing the things I do like, and describing why I don't like the things that I don't like, so you'll understand too. Because I just want to be one different voice. I'm not a comic book professional. I'm not the typical fan. You know, if looking at, and you all know me, so this is not a shock, looking at what's going to be in my top 60 of the year in the next couple days, it's not probably going to be anything by Jeff Johns. It's probably not going to be anything by Dennis Camp. It's not probably going to be a lot of things by Al Ewing. These are the big industry favorites. They are not my favorites. And so part of why I do this show, although it's only one part, is to bring a voice who is not into the stuff that everybody else likes and talk about it. But you know what I am into that everybody else likes? Kelly effing Thompson. And I'm always so excited. Not only did Kelly Thompson win, Best New Series goes to both the writer and the penciler. So Hayden Sherman, who happens to be team non-binary and uses they them pronouns, got to go up on stage. And I always love to see team non-binary with a big win. So if you haven't read Absolute Wonder Woman, I was trying to describe it to my friend Felix this weekend, and I said, Superman is Superman that we know, but with more hope, but also with kind of more dire consequences. Batman is Batman we know, but he's more alone, but he also has more support and is more violent. Wonder Woman is not the Wonder Woman we know. Absolute Wonder Woman is absolutely a whole different book about a whole different character, completely reimagined from the ground up. And to me, that's why it's so fascinating to see what Kelly Thompson's take on it. And of course, over the weekend, since we last spoken, Kelly Thompson was tipped to be helming another classic series, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So that will be very, very interesting. And I think that's gone on quite long enough. So hopefully the audio issues are improved now. And hopefully the stream is being like really janky and jerky and hoppy, all the rabbit words previously. And now from my end anyway, it is seeming a little bit more stable. So I'm hoping more stable. I'm going to put my glasses on, and we're going to get a couple of your comments. Oh, right. It was Zatanna bringing down the house that won Best Limited Series, which I didn't read because I wasn't sure if it was in continuity and there's only so many hours in my day. But now I'll probably read it. I'm also absolutely going to read the Jean Lin Yang's what is it called? Lunar Year Love Story, which he won for Best Writer, and it won for several different publication awards. I don't have like intake for OGNs in the same way I do for floppies, but he's an amazing, amazing Best Industry Writer. It's not shocking at all to see him win, and I definitely will read it and do it as a catch-up read for a show sometime soon. Okay, so let's see if anybody had any big thoughts while I was talking through that. And then, so Manuel was like, did I follow the Eisner Awards? Oh, friend, you had no idea what was coming at that point. But yes, it was all about it. Cruel Angel saying yay for bringing down the house, winning. Super job, very happy for Bilquis Evely. I love her pencils, by the way. I just don't read that Helen of Windham series because I don't like Tom King. But like, I absolutely love Bilquis Evely. I think she did some of the Sandman Universe books, The Dreaming, at one point. And I was like, who is this magician? Amazing, amazing, amazing. I don't know if the Eisners are broadcast anywhere. I just know that certain sites and certain people cover it. I followed the coverage of the amazing podcast Comic Book Couples Counseling. Is that what it's called? It's I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but now I want to get it right because and my keyboard's not plugged in, so that's not going to help. Comic Book Counseling Podcast. What is it? What's the damn actual name? Comic Book Couples Counseling. I was right. So I was following them. They were at the awards. And then also The Beat, which is probably my favorite comic book coverage website that I absolutely support, actually won for Best Comics Journalism. So she was like, sorry, I had to interrupt the coverage because I won an award, which is like so cool. So yeah, that's who I usually follow. Then there's everybody saying that my internet was stuttering, which hopefully we have fully fixed. Novarg is here with his creation L. Super job talking about Jean Lin Yang winning, and very cool, good synergy, right? That he was announced on the same day as the new TMNT writer. Same thing for Kelly Thompson winning Best New Series, and then also getting announced for writing Buffy, which is certainly a good thing for her and for Dynamite, who definitely needs some big sales right now. And it's just like a lot of people saying hello. The awards are for Conan Bryan fans. You mean Conan O'Brien? I don't necessarily get. Oh, you mean because Conan O'Brien is hilarious as the host, and so the awards are for fans of Conan O'Brien because he hosts it. Logan Wayne saying the Grammys also create new categories to appease bigots. Yeah. Ugh. Novarg saying around my neck of the woods a few weeks ago they sent out mail, and this edition in September will be their last outing after 15 years. I clearly missed what that is in reference to, so you'll have to ask me. Maybe you were adding each other. Okay. Very pleased that Jordi Belair won for coloring. Well deserved. Yeah, I think, to me, top tier colorists, Jordi Belair and Tamra Bonvillain, very few people consistently touch. Of course, I love Dean White. I would like to see Adriano Lucas get some recognition. I just think his style is so noticeably him without feeling like it's annoyingly him. He just goes so super saturated. He's not afraid of like big bright reds and like contrasty reds against greens, you know, like purples against, you know, yellows. Like he will really go in and make very, very contrasty choices. And I love that. And it's weird to me that he's not constantly mentioned, because I always, when I read an Adriano Lucas colored book, I'm like, damn. And that is a topic this week, actually, because he was not on a book he's usually on, and I was like, well, damn, but kind of in the opposite direction. Anime saying Lunar New Year love story is good, but I'm also biased since I'm Vietnamese, and it was cool to see Vietnamese American culture explored. Well, I love to see comic books about any kind of like Asian diaspora American culture in America. I just think that it's so present. I have so many friends and family members that are part of that culture and part of that diaspora, and to not see that represented in comics, I feel like, especially in the United States, it's like almost sometimes like it's an invisible minority in storytelling, and people are like, oh yeah, there was that one Asian character. I'm like, but there's nothing cultural. There's nothing about their actual cultural experience. And so I get very, very happy. And I've always liked Jean Lin Yang's stuff, and I remember first reading American Born Chinese around the time when Kid Crisis was born. So I'm a big, big, big supporter. Axel, you know, Max told me how to actually say good morning correctly the way that you're typing it, but do I remember? No, I just have a tiny goldfish brain. I will say that, and Logan Wade asking me if I saw a post that he tagged me on Blue Sky. Someone leaked the shelved 2018 Micronauts animated series. Yes, I actually went and shared it on Your Mint Condition. I think I had already shared it on Your Mint Condition before you shared it to me on Blue Sky, which is maybe why I did not respond. Oh, geez, I just had another thought and it fluttered outside of my mind. Oh, me being upside down. So yeah, this weekend, we went back to the adventure ropes course. Why? Pain? Suffering? I don't know why. I was hoping that it was going to be a couple more months and I was going to like work out. Not in a way where people's like, I'm going to have a beach body by the summer. Your body is your beach body. If you bring a body to the beach, it's a beach body. But I just wanted to get my balance back a little bit more and get a little bit stronger. And I just haven't been going to the pool as much and doing as much yoga. So I was like, you know, a couple months of like pool and yoga, and I'll just feel like Spider-Man leaping from platform to platform in midair. I will just have more confidence, because I did not have a lot of confidence last time. It was quite harrowing. Did I get a lot of time to do that in the 3 weeks since we went last? No, but I did go back to the pool several times. I did do some yoga, and we took some different courses, and on one of them I had to like hang from like a hanging zip line, like it was very American Gladiator, if you remember American Gladiators. And I remember thinking like and it was long. I was like, there's no way. Of course I was buckled in, but I thought I was just gonna be like flopping. And I was like, no, you can do this. Like, you swim, you do push-ups, you do yoga, you can do a dead hang for like 20 seconds. That is within your powers, because I have no upper body strength. These are pool noodles actually that are just attached to my torso. But I made it to the end, and I was so excited that I forgot to put my feet out to brace. And so the big pad is rushing towards me. I'm like, yes, I'm doing it. I'm hanging, and I forget to put my feet out, and I just took the pad full on in the face at the end of that journey, which I don't think that's bruised. I think that's just me going a little heavier on the blush on that side by mistake. But you know what? Little column A, little of column B. Okay, wow, I think we're going to actually start the comics, not the comments, but the comics before the 30-minute mark. Look at that. Look at that amazing, rousing success for me. Okay, as a reminder, there's actually less than 40 books this week. It was a very small release week, but we're still going to take our mid-books break somewhere around the letter H. So if you are saying comments that are kind of about the current book, as I'm talking about the current book, please do share them, especially if little capsule reviews. I love to share your reviews and get your contrasting opinions. I'll put them on screen. If you're talking about a book that's more than one book behind, or if you're asking some like big philosophical topic or my opinion on something, we will catch that in the break in the middle. Okay, so that is how we are going to do things. Let's begin at the beginning, which is I forgot to reshare my screen after we had that little hiccup reset. Entire screen. There we go. Okay. Ba-ba. So, as we know, we don't read 2000 AD anymore on this channel, but we still admire its lovely covers. Oh, and I really have to plug in this darn keyboard. Gosh. Good golly gosh willikers geez. Okay, here we go. And so we come to Absolute Green Lantern. This is by Al Ewing with art from Janoy Lindsay, colors from Lucas Gattoni. Or no, Janoy Lindsay does his own colors and letters from Lucas Gattoni. This book is bad. It's bad. And I want to talk about the why, because I'm not just here to crap on people's hard work in comics. We've already established that I have a lot of trouble with Janoy Lindsay's art. I just don't think he is a model for these characters. They change shape and look and like hairstyle page after page, and I don't think it's intentional. But the other thing is reading Al Ewing's story here, and we finally get a little bit of story here in, chapter 4, in what feels like it's been so decompressed. It just, to me, doesn't feel like it fits the Absolute Universe. The whole idea of the Absolute Universe is that Darkseid made Earth a little bit sadder, a little bit more bleaky, kind of delayed the possibility of hope. But this doesn't square with that. It's all of the Green Lanterns that have ever been from Earth are friends with each other in this dusty desert town, and Abin Sur comes down, but he's like a whole different kind of beast, and he's killing people, but really he's judging them, but really he's putting them in the lantern. It just doesn't, it reads like it's just a YA Green Lantern graphic novel. It doesn't read like it's a part of the Absolute Universe. And I don't think every Absolute Universe book has to feel the same. I don't think it has to all sound the same, but it is a universe. And even Absolute Martian Manhunter, which is a whole different vibe, feels like it's part of that universe. And when you have one book that's an outlying member of that universe, that's hard. It's the same problem I think that people have with Ultimate X-Men in the Ultimate universe, where Ultimate X-Men just has such a different vibe. It doesn't 100% feel like it's part of the same world, and the art style is so different, and so some people love it, and some people riot. And I think that that's probably the case with this book. I think there's probably people who are really digging it that just love all these Green Lantern characters and want to see a YA approach them where they're all neighbors. And there's probably some people like me who's like, I don't understand why they're all living in this town together. I don't understand what this has anything to do with the Absolute Universe, but also it's just not compelling to me. And I think you could like it if you have an affection for these characters that outstrips your need to see a compressed story that moves along. But for me, after 4 issues, this is just a flop. It's a flop, and that's fine. Everybody flops sometimes, and I can understand why people like it, but I don't think people are like 5 stars. I don't know if I believe they're thinking about it very critically, because there's really not much happening in this book. James Abel saying, the way she got the power for the ring was done very good, but I still don't have any reason to care for the characters. Cruel Angel saying, we learn Abin Sur is not a fan of chaos, still not liking Jo. She has accidentally caused problems herself, but it takes it out on Hal, and here comes Hector Hammond. More chaos to annoy Abin Sur. The Darkseid premise for the Absolute Universe always seems very wishy-washy, but David C. loves it unreservedly. So there's people out there that love it, and hopefully I gave a little bit of an idea why some people might, although David C. should chime in with why you do, and I will highlight that either soon or in the break. I don't read Adventure Time. The cover's just here because it came out, but I just, as we've established, I'm a little too young, or a little too old to have been hit with that particular phenomena, and so I don't really have any affection for it. I did read Adventureman Family. Now, Adventureman is this franchise where Matt Fraction and the Dodsons, Terry and Rachel Dodson, with winner Clayton Cowles, they kind of introduced this pulp fiction universe, not like Pulp Fiction, but like actual Pulp Fiction, of these books that have been printed and had been forgotten, and this family and friends find them, and they start to have weird connections with the characters in the books, and so they start to even have their memories or their powers in real life, which is such a cool idea. And I think that it's actually the best Terry Dodson work that I've seen in a while. I just keep coming back to it. His stuff can look so approximate and pillowy in a lot of comic books and on a lot of covers, but I just really get the idea that he's like drawing from the heart here, and he really loves these characters, and they just look so cool and so much more specific than anytime he pops up on a typical superhero book. But I just don't get the point. Like, they keep always do this in 3-issue bursts, and at the beginning of this 3-issue burst we get introduced to this idea that this kid is missing and it's a big deal, but then it winds up kind of just being an anthology story of like 3 particular people in this clan of family and friends reading 3 particular Pulp Fiction books and having memories of 3 specific missions that the pulp heroes go on, which is fine, and it's all a fine quality. But to me, I'm like, what is it for? Like, it has this amazing credits page, which I'll drag onto the screen so you can see, that has all of these characters, so many different names. They're so beautiful. It's such cool graphic design. And then we never really like spend any time on the who or the why of them. And it just is frustrating for me as somebody who's like literally rooting for this comic book, because I'm always rooting for Matt Fraction to do well. I just don't understand like who it's for or what it's trying to accomplish. which is frustrating to me. You know, Cedric and Ellen saying that it's been translated into Dutch, and it does strike me that Matt Fraction is doing something that's shaped a little bit more like a traditional European comic here, where it's not as about like moving a narrative forward all the time. Sometimes it's just kind of like a cool individual story, which a lot how graphic albums often read to me when I read European comics. And so maybe that's a mindset shift I need to go through, that this is not like your typical image book. I don't know. But it's not a bad book. And if anything I said about it attracts you, or if you like Terry Dodson's art and want to see him doing the best art I've seen him do easily in 5 years, then you should read this book. Now we come to All New Venom. This, of course, is by Al Ewing with Carlos Gomez, who is yet to miss an issue, if I'm not mistaken, as a penciler, with Frank D'Armata coloring, who's kind of become the de facto colorist of Venom, and I think gives, even Venom is way, way shinier like he is in this book than normal. I think Frank D'Armata is a huge part of the look of Venom, and lettered by Eisner winner Clayton Cowles. This, somehow, as this series goes on, I am loving it more and more and more, which is like not what I expected. And I think part of it is that I just think with Venom, because of that way that Donny Cates expanded the universe so much, and the way the universe had already been expanded because of Flash Thompson, I just think that I want to read a Venom book about a lot of characters. And I think that last Al Ewing Venom series that ran before this one with the cosmic stuff, it was beautiful and it was cool, but it made Eddie Brock too isolated, and that wasn't as exciting for me. I want to see a community. So I love that Rick Jones is here. I love that Doc Ock is here. I love the way that Al Ewing is playing a beat with Doc Ock, where Doc Ock is like, I'm done trying to unmask people. I don't want to know any more secret identities. It never goes well for me. I love that. I love Dylan Brock being like, who is in the suit, and then realizing and then getting so angry. I love Paul and Robbie Robertson being a part of this. I just love everything about this. And Carlos Gomez's art is stunning. It's getting better and better. I love his figure work. I love his faces. I think I focused so far so much on his action, but this was just lovely to read. And I love because there's so many characters, Mary Jane, Flash Thompson, there's so many people that are part of this story. And then all the symbiotes too, that I'm like genuinely excited. It feels like I'm reading a book about a whole line of characters. And for me, that is what I think I am actually looking for out of a Venom book. James saying this issue shows us how dumb and irresponsible Paul is. Everybody's got to back off of my friend with the man bun there. He's my self-insert character in this comic book, and you better be nice to him. Okay, let's move on to Amazing Spider-Man. Now, this has John Romita Jr. on art for the second issue in a row. And I know, because I am one of the haters, that I sometimes don't like his artwork. I think it looks really great here. I think inked by Scott Hanna and colored by Marcio Menez really is the trick. I mean, this page looks great. There is not a single thing that I could maybe hit. Spider-Man's head is a little bit square in that one panel, but it tracks. It's exciting. It's kinetic. The page layout is like a normal page layout, but it's making good use of the space. This is great. The thing is, I don't think of John Romita Jr. as this amazing action artist. And Marvel seems to have a tendency to want to put him on action arcs. Like at the end of that last run by Zeb Wells, he was on an arc that was just like a throwdown for issues and issues between Peter Parker and Tombstone fighting themselves bloody. And like, I think I like action from him, but I don't think of him as like let's see a whole issue knockdown drag out like that. The way that people talk about Daniel Warren Johnson is not how I talk about JR. I think he's good for really tight, well choreographed bursts of action like on this page, which is just colored so beautifully. And then acting. I think actually when he's got the right inker and colorist, he's good at acting. And so I like this. And I didn't really talk about the story, but there's this guy, Hellgate, it's Joe Kelly just hits so many funny plot beats here and dialogue beats of Peter Parker like being like, hold on, we've got to talk to him like he's from D&D, and he's like, forsooth, doused guardian, like he's just, and it's, Peter Parker being a moron, and it's hilarious. But it's kind of like, why is he here? Like, why is this crazy supernatural character here? He kills a bunch of people, of course. Spider-Man's never a fan of that. I don't know if I love the story. I kind of like more grounded Spider-Man stories usually, and the first one was so grounded and so cool, but it's not bad, and I have an open mind, and I'm willing to see where it goes. And I do like Peter getting really angry about I like the line between Peter just quipping and thwipping and being funny, and then also him realizing the seriousness of something and being like, you're hurting people. I really, really like when that line is being played for. Logan Wayne, I mean, still Spider Family, so we can still talk about it here, saying the first time in history that someone has said, I love Paul, unironically, when talking about Marvel's Paul. Novark saying, now I'm curious what Paul did and why it's Krisis his favorite. I know, it's not my favorite. Did I say favorite character? I just like him because I like the idea of somebody being introduced into the Spider-Man world and like kind of being in on it and being new to the world, and Spider-Man immediately having beef with that person, because it kind of makes that person our perspective character into like, your life is crazy, but also making their own choices in it. And I just really think, I know everybody was so frustrated with Zeb Wells, but for me, the Paul stuff, it made sense. Like, I was hooked on that story. The first 25 issues made sense to me. I was really interested in the Paul stuff, and I have kind of already let the ship sail that Peter's not with MJ, so I don't get upset about things that are like relationship stuff with them. And plus Paul's got the long hair and the man bun, so, you know, that's like a similar vibe to me as well. So yeah, I don't love him, but I just like him as a foil to Peter Parker in a way that I think Flash Thompson used to be a foil to Peter Parker. I like when Peter Parker has non-superhero foils who are still kind of in on it. And so I think that's the reason that I kind of appreciate him. Okay. JR has said that people compliment him on his battered and bruised Spider-Man, like he draws battle damage Spider. Oh, okay, I can see that. So it's not that he's like the best at action necessarily, it's that he's the best at beaten up Spider-Man. So this is Aquaman Discovery Shark Week. I did not find it after I will admit, relatively cursory search online, but it's written by a writer I like, Wells Gosh, but and it's Aquaman seeking the assistance of sharks to promote the Discovery Channel Shark Week. Please let me know if you read it. Now we come to Arcana Royale. Oh, did I? Oh, you know what? I thought this was the Minor Arcana Jeff Lemire book, but I still dropped it, so I didn't read it. I didn't like the last issue. It's just now that they explained this kind of mystical poker tournament, but with tarot cards, I was like, okay, I got the whole story. I don't need to keep reading. But I do remember somebody read it. No, it wasn't Kane. Cruel Angel read it. So Cruel Angel's review is, this will be standing in for my review, much fun when the game itself forces the players to go all in even when they are not playing. Seems like they are rushing to the end, might have played out better as a 6-issue series rather than a 4-issue series. There you go. I don't read Arcbound, which is Tom Hardy, the actor Tom Hardy, writing with Scott Snyder. Oh, now we come to Marvel's digital book. So Astonishing Spider-Man Infinity comic written by Scott Ackerman, I should say, and this one is actually drawn by Salva Esman, who's like a real artist. Not that the people who usually are on this book are not real artists, but he's an artist we've seen in like mainline Marvel books. And this goes back to the focus on Spider-Man, and actually, for once, this kind of worked for me, because we're playing out this whole beat that Spider-Man had briefly lost his powers, and then he gets his powers back from Richards, but they're like superpower powered. So it kind of plays with this kind of silly plot of like the Avengers call in Spider-Man, and Spider-Man punches Terax and he lays him out with one blow. And I just think that like that's a beat you can play in these digital comics, right? I keep saying you can't get very far with Spider-Man relationship stuff in these digital comics because like that's for the main title. And you're not going to get too far with Spider-Man, trying to give him some big life-shaking plot that's going to threaten Aunt May's life in here. Because again, that's like a main title thing. This kind of stuff, this frivolous nonsense where like 1 week out of the month he had extra superpowers and he was a call-in Avenger, that's what these digital comics are for. And they're supposed to be fun. And I actually did have fun in this issue. Astonishing X-Men Infinity comic. This was actually really interesting because Alex Pecknadel was writing all of 2 pages of the Hellfire Vigil, which will be the last book we talk about this week because it's the last alphabetically. And so we actually paused his current story to do a insert story that would lead all of his characters, which the primary stars in this are Husk, Skin, and Banshee, to their appearance in the Hellfire Vigil. And I love that. I mean, spoilers for what I'm going to talk about later, but the X-Line works the best when it feels interconnected and we know that these characters know each other and care about each other. And so I think it really worked here. Philip Sevy, I think, has ways that he's drawing these characters that I've become really comfortable with. But the best thing that I liked about it, by the way, it's colored by Michael Bertolo and letters by Clayton Cowles. The thing I liked the most about this, though, is it had Banshee really reflecting on Maura McTaggart and like, was it ever real? And he's saying any of the 1,000, do I have to do an Irish accent? It's going to be bad. Any of the 1,000 things we promised each other in the dark. Or were you just reciting lines from a dreary old play you performed so many times it lost all meaning? I missed you, darling. But then he's like, you know, sitting on the ground in his bedroom just being like, was anything about this love real? And who comes to kind of like shout him down and break him out of his stupor? One of the leprechauns of Cassidy Keep. I love the continuity deep cut of that, but I don't just like it because it tickles my continuity brain. I liked it because it was just a good exploration of where this character Banshee would be now and how he would feel about Krakoa, considering how much he lost as a result of Krakoa, as opposed to what everybody else kind of gained from Krakoa. So actually, I thought this issue, number 27, was very, very worth reading. Bad Bug is one of these like Kickstarter publishers that just all of a sudden, like a bunch of books that will come out that haven't come out for like a whole year and a half. And so this is one of them, Astro Witch, which I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to get from this cover, but I do think it's drawn very, very well. Now we come to the finale of Jed MacKay's Masters of Evil arc in Avengers. And I want to start out by talking about the art from Andre Boccardo, because I wasn't super, super excited by them at the beginning, but I do think that they found more and more interesting ways to draw these character models, and they found more and more likenesses for these characters. But I want to talk about a couple things that really bugged me about this issue and are holding me back here, which is, okay, if we look at this panel of Black Panther, to see blues as the highlight on Black Panther's black costume, that's comic book tradition. Wonder Woman's hair was highlighted blue, you know, as far back as the 40s, Superman's hair, like blacks read blue on the page, that's fine. But you know where I'm going, because you know what I talk about with Federico Blee here. I don't think everything should be blue. I don't think that the reflection on the green should be blue, and the lowlights and highlights on Sam Wilson's face as an African-American should be blue. It makes him look ashy. It drives me crazy. Also, I do not like costumes that are like crop top costume designs on a guy where everything, I like crop tops on a guy, but I don't like it when everything on the costume from there down is solid color. It just makes their torso look like a weird shape, and I don't think it does the artist any favors. We just needed one more element, like a stripe down the side or like something. That's why they used to put the characters in briefs, like Cyclops and Superman, right? Because just seeing like whole torso like that, all one color, it just starts to look weird, and it makes the torso look weird. And again, so here's Andre Boccardo doing great work. I mean, it's not what Storm looks like in every book, and I think he found a very specific face for Storm that doesn't just look like a westernized, you know, white person face, which a lot of people draw for her because she's supposed to look so unique. She's supposed to look unique and still be a black person from Africa. But again, I really loved this page of art, probably my favorite page from this whole run. But again, why are the highlights so blue, Federico Blee? Why? You're ruining every comic you colored. This is not a style. It's not a look. It's bad coloring. But, you know, I think Jed MacKay did a great job of kind of like wrapping up this Masters of Evil's plot and kind of tying it into the rest of the Avengers stuff. It was a very mild arc from a book that I usually am loving. And so I'm really looking forward to getting back to like the main squad being back in the book. James Abel saying, I'm so over the story arc. It went on too long. I did like the page with Storm and Black Panther, that page that might also be tied into X-Men Hellfire Vigil #1. Okay. T. Marcel having a laugh at my constant going off about, I literally, this is a true story, I have a de-bleeing filter in Photoshop, and sometimes when he colors an issue that I really am loving and I find that there's a blue tinged wall between me and the issue that's preventing me, see, I'm turning blue tinged because I'm messing with the color balance, I will actually screen capture every single page and load them into Photoshop and then run my anti-blee filter to de-blee all of the blee pages so that they look like they were colored by somebody who was not making everything blue, because I am a crazy person. Okay, let's continue. I love everything about all of your comments on this. This is why I love hanging out with you, Novak, saying, oh yeah, take that colors. Look, I would like to be known as the channel who celebrates colorists the most out of everybody talking on YouTube. You know how much I love a colorist. You know how much I will trumpet good colors. You know how much a colorist make or breaks a book for me, which we're about to talk about really soon. But at the same time, I would like to also be known for the person who calls out coloring things that nobody else calls out. How could they not call it out when it is so obvious? And Superjob saying, I'm blue, WT. You people are hilarious. Okay. Avengers Academy. This one is for my Generation X fans. You know who you are. You know, you crazy freaks who love Generation X back from 1994. Because somehow Anthony Oliveira and his regular artist here, Bailey Rosenlund, one of the two regular artists, along with KJ Diaz and Joe Caramagna, made Emplet that Emplet, Monet's St. Croix's brother, into a tragic, romantic, and dare I say, somewhat weirdly sexy character. But that Emplet, and tied him into Blade and kind of made him a character you can root for. I don't know how Anthony Oliveira arrived at this book with this thing of like, here's what we're going to do. It's going to be super gay. We're going to be sex positive. Also, we're going to bring back Arnie Roth from J.D. Mateus' Captain American run. Also, we're going to turn Blackheart, Mephisto's son, into a total fuckboy. Also, I'm going to make Emplet hot. Like, I just want to be at that pitch meeting. And I have talked to him once or twice on Blue Sky. He's so cool. I mean, I think he's so cool. I have his novel. I've been following him from long before he was writing anything at Marvel, which is not a brag. I just think he's so cool. And I love his opinions and his writing and his critical writing. But that's why I love this comic book, because it just takes the most small ball little stuff about characters that nobody else is going to care about, that will never get this amount of shine out in the wider Marvel universe, and he gives them so much life and like epic here. And this was also a really good story for Blade's daughter, Bloodline. So I think it was just like a very, very, very cool book, colored well, drawn well, and unexpectedly sexy. Now we come to Batgirl, talking about things that were not unacceptable. It's unacceptable how much I liked this comic it is. It's written by Tate Bromball with art from regular artist back now after a break Takeshi Miyazawa, a modern master, colors from Mike Spicer, and letters from Tom Napolitano. I loved this. I loved this. Loved, like 5 stars maybe? It was amazing. For a couple of reasons. We have Cass all in costume. I don't think she has to be in costume for the book to be good, but I think putting her in costume makes the more very succinct, brusque thought narration from her click more, because it goes with the look of her face. And I like her in this fish out of water setting. I love her on a ranch. Like, to me, that immediately just hits. Take her out of Gotham. Not that I don't want to see her in Gotham, but like, there's something funny about her being in this kitchen in this ranch with this dino crunch on the table. And this immediately spins out of the 2-issue history of Lady Shiva from the last 2 issues, which I absolutely loved. And so this flashes back to that Lady Shiva was a Bronze Age DC character, had connections who are also connected to Cassandra Cain, and she's aware of that, and she goes and hunts one of them down, Bronze Tiger, to have a reckoning about her mother and her mother's history, and she finds out an awfully big secret. James, I'm not gonna highlight your comic because it's a little bit of a spoiler, but I will say, Cruel Angel, Batgirl, I loved it. The verbal fencing, play-by-play, the fight scenes, Cats gets more family, plus Cats in a new costume on horseback was an image. Yeah, agreed. I never thought I needed it until now. Best issue by far. I agree. This is the best issue of the series by far. And Miyazawa, who has a very, very distinct style. You probably know him from books like Miss Marvel, or somewhere right on the shelf. I have Mech Cadets, which he does with Greg Pak. And I felt like he was purposely restraining that or changing it a little bit. Not that he should ever change. He's, as I said, a modern master, but it was just fun to see him kind of like change the tone a little bit intentionally. So yeah, I really think that if you have not been reading this book all along and you're down for a Lady Shiva origin story, you should just start with issue, whatever 2 issues ago was. What was this? 8? Yeah, you should 9. So you should just start and read issue 7 or 8 and then pick up on this. You could read it from the beginning, but I just felt like that first arc was weirdly slow. I didn't read Batman 89 Echoes, which is the second issue spinning off of the continuity of the Michael Keaton Batman movies written by Sam Hamm. This was really delayed, which is probably why I haven't read it. Also, alternate universe, but the previous issue 5 came out in like December. Really great cover, though, but I just don't read this, and this was the final issue. I don't read Becca Boo versus St. Patrick's Day, which seems like it's a little bit late for hitting the sales season of St. Patrick's Day, which now we come to Birds of Prey, and I've teased this several times. So look at this cover. I don't know if it's big enough for you to see. What looks wrong about this cover? I'll give you a hint. It's nothing about the art. It's nothing about the logo. It's about the credits, because this is credited to Hi-Fi as the colorist. Now, I like Hi-Fi as a colorist. I'm not saying anything bad about Hi-Fi as a colorist. However, this book, from the very first issue by Jordi Belair on colors, has been defined by its color look. It is not a book that looks like the rest of DC's line. It has a certain amount of desaturation to it, has a certain amount of off-registration colors and kind of stereoscopic edge lighting to it, and it took Adriano Lucas a few issues to kind of get there. And so his first arc coloring Sami Basri was good. Sami Basri's art's always amazing, but it didn't feel like Birds of Prey. In the last 3 issues, I think Adriano Lucas nailed it. This issue doesn't look like Birds of Prey. It just looks like any DC book. It looks like Hi-Fi, who's an amazing talented colorist, got the DC house style and just colored to the house style. And for me, I can't love a book that changes up its coloring look in the middle of an arc. I just can't. And if it was at the start of a new arc, which is where Adriano Lucas began, when he first joined the title, that's fine, because you kind of don't feel like you got this. To me, it won't read well in trade. I won't have good memories of it, because to me, colors are so much of what establishes the tone and the voice of a book that we often don't notice. This page was the one page that for me, like, almost got there. There was almost a hint of that edge lighting that I'm looking for on the blackened version of Barda here, that like almost took me there. It was so jarring to me that I had trouble, honestly, paying attention to the story. And it was a good story. I love this arc from Kelly Thompson writing. And by the way, it's lettered by Clayton Cowles, Eisner winner, for this book, among many others, because I love that Kelly has kind of like built up this idea of there's this ragtag band of bad guys who very specifically are crafted to be a problem for the Birds of Prey, but they're also pretty small-time, non-threatening bad guys, so the Birds of Prey can find their way around it. I love that I love the way the bad guys are interacting with each other. I love the way that Black Canary kind of decides how to strike back. It was a very good penultimate issue. It did not have middle issue syndrome, but I still just couldn't love it as much as I wanted to love it. I don't read Bitter Root, the next movement, because I just did not find this jump forward into the 60s as appealing as the original Harlem Renaissance version. I don't read Black Hammer Spiral City, because why would I willingly read a Jeff Lemire comic book? I have read a lot of Black Hammer. I have a Black Hammer guide on my site. It really does not excite me. And so we come on to Bring On the Bad Guys Green Goblin, which is really just Bring On the Bad Guys issue 2 of 7, because there's all these one-shots and they all relate to a plot that Mephisto has about the Soul Forge. And so the main story here was written by Ethan Parker and Griffin Sheridan, who are a new writing team who I've not read yet. They've written some indie stuff. Art from Matteo Della Fonte, colors from Matteo Iancono, and letters from Travis Lanham. This was, if we forget the continuity implications, a pretty cool Green Goblin story. It's about just as Harry is developing into the Green Goblin originally, or Norman developing into the Green Goblin, and that he's visited by Mephisto when he's just a crazy businessman who's teetering on the edge of a psychotic breakout, and that Spider-Man tips him over the edge. But this is not about Spider-Man. This is about him just killing one person, maybe the first person he ever decides to kill. The problem I have with that is I don't know if I want Mephisto to be like a motivating factor for the whole story of Norman Osborn. We've inserted so many other things over the years that this, to me, just feels like a step too far. That said, this was so readable. The craft was so high. It was tense. A lot of times when you have an issue like this where it's like, the villain's going to kill one person. The person's a good family man. Look, there he is with his kids. I'm like, it just feels so tropey. And I'm like, you're not going to make me care about this guy and his family in 20 pages. So just stop trying to make me care. Here, it's not that I cared, but it just felt like it was crafted in a way that was a true moral dilemma for us as the reader, for Norman Osborn as a character. It was colored so well by Matteo Iancono. It just like really, really worked for me. And the tension when Green Goblin finally comes for this guy with his knife to kill him on Mephisto's behalf, because he's actually a good person and that's who Mephisto wants to die. I was in it at that point. Like, I was really in it. And then there was a very brief backup just giving us a little bit more of information about Sister Sorrow, written by Mark Guggenheim, who wrote the first issue, and art from Michael Stabmaria, who I will never turn down art from. This was really great. Colors from Dono Sanchez Almara, and also lettered by Travis Lanham. So I'm actually mildly enjoying these Bring On the Bad Guys. I don't really have a sense of where they're going, and I'm a little afraid that it's all going to be kind of continuity insert stuff. But so far, 2 for 2, pretty high quality. Okay, wow. I'll tell you right now, this timer is going to be absolutely meaningless for this book. This is Chip Zdarsky. Actually, yeah, Chip Zdarsky, Captain America, #1, drawn by Valerio Schiti, colored by Frank Martin, lettered by Joe Caramagna. Cover by Ben Harvey, who I love. Where do I even begin? I guess I have to begin with the concept that this is a Captain America who has been out of the ice for a week. So this is flashbacky, and I always get a little bit nervous when we get this feeling that the only stories there are to write about Captain America are flashback stories, and there's no present day action here. But Chip really feels like he has something to say here, and part of what made it so jarring for me is that it very quickly establishes that Captain America will have returned sometime after 9/11, which is so weird to think about as somebody who was, has very specific memories of that day. But that's the sliding timescale for you. In a way, it doesn't actually make sense because based on how long Cap has been with the Avengers, he actually would have gotten here in 2015, I think. So it's weird to portray this as having happened not that long after 9/11, but I actually do think this tracks because we see a person who was a kid during 9/11 and now he's old enough to join the army. So I think it's supposed to be later in the 2000s, but anyway, the timeline doesn't ever make sense at Marvel to begin with. I'm not going to get hung up on it. But the thing that allows us to do is reframes Captain America in the modern day without changing who he is. And Chip Zdarsky really, really just gets to the heart of Captain America very quickly. He doesn't want anybody to be hurt. He's trying to contend with a world that he does not understand, with different factionalism and different politics from the world that he knew. But he still knows what a good deed looks like. And he still knows that, nobody should be dying for their beliefs. And the way that he talks down a potential suicide bomber here and kind of reverts to talking about his time in the army really rang true in a way that didn't just feel nationalistic or jingoistic to me. And the way that Captain America's first urge is I'm not so sure about this Avengers thing. What if I were to just go back to the army, right? I was a symbol of the army before, with almost a certain naivete about what is the U.S. Army in the new millennium compared to what the U.S. Army was during World War II. And that really works for me. But I also want to talk about something else that really works for me here, which is Valerio Schiti's art. Now, I do broadly enjoy him, and I've liked him. He's worked with Al Ewing a lot. He was the launch artist for Jed McKay's Avengers, but there was something very special and different about Schiti's art back on Journey into Mystery, back in 2012, when he was doing it with Catherine Immonen, and it was all about Sif, that for me has never been matched in his modern stuff. And people's styles change, and he's moved a little bit more towards the Marvel Hell style, but he had a certain unusual perspective and way that his characters really look stamped on the page that I just have been missing from his art for years. And people get so excited from him, and I'm like, well, it's missing that thing that made me so excited. But here, it was back. His characters look stamped on the page, and I don't know if he's just inking with a thicker line here, which he certainly is on this page. I think part of it is Frank Martin's colors. I think you've got to play with contrast in a very specific way. And looking back at why I liked that Journey into Mystery series so much, it was because his characters just stood out. It was understood that his characters should stand out from the background and just look big and bold, and that kind of accentuates his ink lines. And I think Frank Martin, who any comic would be lucky to have Frank Martin coloring it, really understands it here. And as this wore on, I mean, I could have clipped so many pages for it. I loved everything Chip did. It felt like a really genuine take on Captain America's character. When Steve Rogers goes out and meets for the first time with Reed Richards, and Reed Richards is talking about his family's history in the army and how he has a Captain America action figure. And here I'm gotta watch out for crying here. Reed says, "I'm incredibly sorry for all you've lost, but I'm so glad you're here again. The world needs you." These dolls, did they make one of Bucky too? Well, actually, they're called action figures, and you're damn right they did. Guys, I mean, we know Bucky comes back and he's the Winter Soldier, so I don't need to cry about it. But what wholesome, positive masculinity on that page. Anyway, this comic is phenomenal. It's a 5 out of 5. I can't wait to read the second issue. I'm just totally enraptured. Jamie C47 saying, "I loved it. The idea of Cap in the War on Terror has very high potential." Yone Paul is saying, "Captain America #1 enjoyable read. If issue 2 gives me something bigger, I'll keep reading." Citric and Ellen saying, "I was intrigued by the preview of Captain America and bought the issue. In short, I'm sold. But I'm a bit weary. I think the story will lead to tragedy." Don't take this the wrong way, but I like the choice of blue for Cap's costume. But it's okay, but here's the thing. This is a great example of look at the cast of the highlights on this page. Just because he's in blue doesn't mean all the highlights are blue. The police bike, it's like steely, it's shiny. Some of it's reflecting blue because it's reflecting him, but some of it's reflecting in front of him. There's plenty of blue in the sky, but the sky is a yellow cast that's trying to tell us that the sun is setting. We're at the end of the day. Like, colors communicate setting, colors communicate lighting, colors communicate story. There's nothing wrong with blue on a page, but to give everything a kind of blue cast, it's like, what are you telling us about the world, right? That communicates something about, there's books that look very red, that communicates something about the world. And so I just think that, you know, you have to make a decision with your colors. And I think Frank Martin, the colors on this page in specific, I feel like I could write a 1,000-word essay about the colors on this page. There's just so many specific choices on the faces, in the backgrounds, on this guy who might be a suicide bomber. I'm just absolutely stunned by the colors on this page. Okay, I think that I've done tearing up. Also, hello to Hayden, who is late, and hello to everybody who's tuned in. The viewer count, I've noticed, has gone up quite a bit. So thank you to everybody who's tuning in, and it's wonderful to have you with me. This is Charlemagne the God presenting Illuminati with Dennis Cowan and Bill Sienkiewicz, who is quite a pedigree, but I just didn't read this because I'm kind of done with AWA after that AI art nonsense. But I mean, if you like, I kind of, maybe I'll read it when the second issue comes out, because I just don't know how I turned down a comic by those people. I kind of just forgot about it. I really wanted to read this. Comics of the Movement. I don't think it was new comics. It was actually like excerpted comics of the civil rights movement that were contemporaneous to the civil rights movement in the 60s. And to me, that's so interesting because I love historical comics. I love especially historical comics that are like activist type comics. I don't just like Marvel and DC. I love stuff like this from the 60s and the 70s. But I just couldn't find it anywhere digitally. But now I want to find out what it collected, and is there any way for me to read those comics? I'm really interested. Now we come to Daredevil. Oh, whoa. First of all, I mean, talking about the ongoing editorial clown show of this comic book, nothing about this cover happened in the comic book. This was like an alternate John Romita Jr. cover that he drew for the last arc that's not true of this arc. Now, maybe that was Saladin Ahmed shifting the story, because this actually is just a fight with Taskmaster. It starts with Carlos Nieto's art, who I usually really like, but he's drawing Daredevil like he's like an overweight 60-year-old guy with a beer gut. Like, there's something so wrong with the perspective on the costume on this page. It looks totally wrong. But then we switch back to Jose Luis Suarez. His art is stunning. I cannot wait to see what he's on after this book. Just the kineticism, the way he draws Daredevil, the paneling, the way that he draws his powers, and of course, great collaboration with Inker Oren Jr. and colorist Jesus Bertov here. And so when we finally got to the fight with Taskmaster, I mean, I love Taskmaster. I am like a not so secret Taskmaster fangirl, so I'm always excited when he turns up anywhere. And I just thought this was a great fight. Was it that interesting as a Daredevil story? No, especially because some of the relationship stuff that Saladin Ahmed is doing is just so dumb. But you know what? We've only got 3 issues left. I'm trying to accentuate the positive here. And honestly, if you like Taskmaster and you want to see him fight Daredevil, it was a very fun fight, and it was witty. And Saladin Ahmed found interesting things to pull out of this fight and what it would be like for them to fight. At one point, Daredevil's like, "Are you blinking a lot?" And Taskmaster says, "Yeah, because you fight like a blind person." Like, that's cool. That's cool. So, yeah, there you go. Okay, let's continue. Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe one last time. I didn't read because it's an alternate universe book. I didn't read yet another bad bug comic, Death Knell, which is another midnight mature readers comic that seems to be a titty book. And again, we spell titties here with D's, 2 double ones. I don't know why I didn't read Dune, Edge of a Christ Knife, Hiding Among Harkonnens. Wait, I can tell you, because that title is horrible. I really like Dune. It's one of my favorite fictional universes. I really like the Dune comic books that have been coming out the past couple of years, but it just, I don't know. Dune, Edge of a Chris Knife, Hiding Among Harkonnens. I just felt like I had already read a whole issue worth of comics by reading that title, so I didn't read it. I did read the final issue of this Fantastic Four Into the Depths from Matt Groom. It was a comic book. I don't know what it is, but this was so forgettable. Reed gives a speech to Mole Man to be like, "You could be something more." And then it was over. So then we come to Gehenna. Now anytime a book has a subtitle, Gehenna, Naked Aggression, I kind of assume that it's like a sequel. Because why would you do a subtitle on an original? The original should just be Gehenna. But I don't think she's existed in comics before. I think this is the first story So it's just called Naked Aggression. It's by Patrick Kindlin and artist Maurizio Rosenweig, with colors from Matteo Vittani and letters from Jim Campbell. And this is their own original creation. And I think a lot of people probably would dig this. She's very Frank Castle as the Punisher, as an assassin, right? Her bad things have happened to her family. She wants to get back at the people who've made the bad things happen. The solicits promised me something that I did not get from this book, which is that there's this idea that there's a contract out in her life, but the contract has changed hands so many times that people don't even remember who actually wants to kill her. That's kind of interesting. That didn't happen here. What this was her deciding that she's going to assassinate this guy, but instead she finds his child, and so other people are coming to kill her, or maybe also him, and so she decides that she's going to help him escape because she just can't bear to see any violence done to a child, even though she knows the people who gave her this current contract would probably be pleased if she did kill him. Here's the thing I'm going to say. This was a fine action issue. Honestly, if you just wanted like an all-out Punisher-style action issue, I think that this could have been for you. There's too many lines on the page. Too many lines. Too many lines. The face, too many lines in her face. It just makes everything look so heavy to put so many lines on every, like, especially a younger character, and I don't think she's supposed to be that old. That's not just shadowing lines on this page, that's like lines, like, it just looks like she's old and wrinkled, which is fine if she is, but I don't think that's who that character is based on who we see on this cover. I just think this artist needs a few less lines, or the colorist, Matteo Vittani, needs to do color holds on the lines to make them not all black. I think to put that many black lines on the face of this like 11-year-old kid, it's just makes him look too heavy. It's over rendered. Like to have the entire shading on the foreground of his whole body here be that rendered, that's not right. And I think that a colorist paying more attention to the line style of their artist would have done some of that as a color hold. Okay, Ghostbusters Dead Man's Chest, I don't read because I don't really follow the Ghostbuster franchise anymore. G.I. Joe, a real American hero. This is issue 318 of Larry Hama's ongoing G.I. Joe continuity, penciled by Paul Pelletier, inked by Tony Cordos, colors from Francesco Segala with flats from Sabrina Del Grosso, letters from Pat Brousseau. Here's the plus and the minus of this book, because I want to try to explain it to you if you would like picking it up from issue 300 and just binging it. It's G.I. Joe as soap opera. All of the toys are on the table, all of the plots are in motion, all of the factions are factioning, and Larry Hama is juggling all of it constantly. So if you want to see somebody in a comic book playing with a sheer vast quantity of G.I. Joes equal to the amount of G.I. Joes that exist as toys and in cartoons, this is your book. I love that we're playing with the ninja G.I. Joes here. I love the more toyetic G.I. Joes. They're infiltrating Cobra's town and wading through the sewers. They're trying to find out what's going on there, but they're also posing as a family who lives in that town, who's the family of a Crimson Guard there. I absolutely love that. Also, we have a G.I. Joe team who's infiltrating the Cobra Island, which now has been taken over by a deadly AI who's in cahoots with Mindbender, who's making cyborgs out of humans. He sees one of the cyborgs here, he's unhappy with them, so he just twists their neck right off like he's taking the cap off a bottle, and the G.I. Joes are like, oh my goodness. And I love the feel changes between these scenes, that they're all actually pretty creepy. It's a lot of like creepy zombie type of stuff in this issue. The feel is so different, and that's so much dictated both by the coloring and by Paul Pelletier as a pencil. I just think to have Paul Pelletier as a penciler on this is such a big get. Like he's pretty great. He's been on some pretty big books, and I love that Skybound will shell out the money for this Real American Hero series. So if you just want to read a series that really feels like watching a G.I. Joe cartoon that puts everybody in play, that has every faction doing all the things, and is not shy about cramming characters in, then this is the book for you. And honestly, I just found myself very pleased with this issue. Was it the best comic book ever? No. But did I really love it? And do I really love Larry Hama's ability to kind of switch around all these different scenes and characters and concepts? Yes, I absolutely do. Here's a little story about our friends at Keenspot. You may recall last week I tried to buy the Chamberlains issue #1 so I could read it for you as a catch-up read and talk about Keenspot comics, because I did get one of them, Girl and Robot, and I finally read a Keenspot comic. It has now been 10 days since I purchased Chamberlain's #1, and they still have not sent me the PDF. I've emailed them multiple times to their email address that is for customer service issues and gotten no response. And since these issues are $6 for a standard length comic book, even digital, which translates to 11 New Zealand dollars, I am not going to keep pumping money into the slot to get nothing. They never send me the PDF. So I'm going to email them one more time, and then I'm going to have a dispute with my credit card company about Keenspot. So if you're looking for my review about Keenspot comics, I will not be purchasing any more of them because they're a bunch of frauds, apparently, until they get back to me and give me this damn PDF that I paid for 10 days ago to do on a show that was 7 days ago. The Glopple, number 2. I dropped Godzilla Heist. I do believe this is the final issue. Maybe not. Who knows? But I liked the Ocean's 11 part much more than I liked the Godzilla part. And the more Godzilla-y got in a game about... I didn't think that Godzilla Heist was going to be about a giant mech Godzilla fighting Godzilla. I thought it was going to be about heists. And it stopped being about heists. I did see, speaking of Godzilla, some people in the comments and the chat saying that this is one of their favorite books of the week. I, of course, did not read it because Godzilla vs. Thor, non-continuity. But it's by Jason Aaron, who's like the Thor writer to me in modern Thor, so I am curious to see what your takes on it were. Jamie C47 saying, my favorite book of the week, a great story by Aaron, great art with brilliant action scenes and a fantastic ending, by far and away the best Godzilla versus book. But then James Abel says, didn't work for me. The artwork seemed off at times. The plot seemed all over the place with magic and Godzilla. Okay, well, there you go. Dissenting views. I did read Gotham City Sirens Unfit for Orbit. And not only did I read this, I caught up on what I realized I missed from last year, which was Leah Williams' first series. So this has become now, apparently, an annual tradition where Leah Williams writes a 4 or 5 issue weekly series of Gotham City Sirens, which of course is Poison Ivy, Catwoman, and Harley. The one from last year was truly, truly terrible. But, Leah Williams sometimes hits for me and sometimes don't. So I went into this with an open mind. And the first thing is, I just loved Haining's art. Haining has really, really cool art. I loved how it was colored by Ivan Placencia here. It's big, it's bold, it's neon. This is the first page. I was immediately drawn in. Not because Harley was in the shower, but just when I see colors this vivid, I just see, characters that look this well-formed. And I love, hair that, it reminds me of the way Daniel Warren Johnson draws hair. I was immediately in. Then I also love, Leah Williams does have a certain correct vibe for Harley. I would not mind reading a Harley run from her because she really, really gets this idea of Harley as just like, she has no inner monologue. She just sometimes says the thing, but without even thinking about saying the thing. And I don't think that's really the case. And I'm fine with her having an inner monologue, but that's how Leah Williams writes her. And it works for me. And so I love that she calls up, Poison Ivy, and they're in this kind of like amorphous polyamorous relationship with Janet from HR, which is from G. Willow Wilson's book. And Harley says, "Hiya, babe, what you doing?" And Poison Ivy says, "Janet." It's a funny beat. It's a funny beat about these two characters. The problem that I eventually had, though, and just this Haining art is so incredible, is that I felt like this last year, too. I don't feel like Leah Williams has that much use for Catwoman, and I understand that Catwoman's kind of got to play the straight man in this group, although you could also have Ivy play the straight man too, and but Ivy is a little bit more villainous and a little bit more bloodthirsty in general. Harley is comedic, and so you kind of play Selena Kyle really, really straight. But because of that, it kind of just feels like this is actually a Harley and Ivy book, and Catwoman's just tagging along, which is absolutely what it felt like last year too. Catwoman is the center of this plot, though, and she's asking them to participate in a heist with her, so she's a little more centered, but she just doesn't feel like she's taking up the right amount of space, and so I just feel like Leah Williams is, like, constantly auditioning to be on a Harley book, and I don't know if it ever fully feels like a Gotham City Sirens book. That said, it was a very fun issue to read, and the art was absolutely incredible. I hope it will be the same artist the whole time. Last year, the issues alternated between two different artists with two vastly different styles, and one of the styles I hated, so that just contributed to how much I didn't like it last year, but we will see, because I'm sure you've all read issue 2 and 3 already, because it's a weekly series. Actually, I guess we're up to the last issue now, and I am just lagging behind. James Abel says, I love the artwork. It's had a mix of anime with cartoon. The issue also had some Charlie's Angels, Totally Spies vibe to it. Yeah, Superjob also hated that first Gotham City Siren series. I actually liked the first issue a lot. And then the rest of the series made no sense to me whatsoever. I dropped Stephanie Phillips Grimm. I was so into the first 2-3 arcs, and then it just felt like one of these books where the indie author realized their book got popular and they could do whatever they want and totally lost the plot thread. Sometimes being succinct is a positive quality. So I dropped Grimm and I will not be going back. I think it's almost over. I think I heard that it was, Little Birdie told me it was ending with 25. I did read Helverine, my bisexual or pansexual murder son, Dakin, who's now getting his own omnibus. You better believe I will be buying that on day one. This is by Benjamin Percy, art from Raphael Yanko, who I love, colors from Brian Valenza, letters by Travis Lanham. And here's the thing that I just don't understand about this book. It's who... and sometimes I must seem like a broken record on some of these books. Daken is a very specific character. He's Wolverine's son. He's committed atrocities. He's pansexual. He's super violent. He just got killed and is back from the dead. There's so many beats to play with him. And to just play him as this guy who has claws. And at one point he's like, I got on the military motorbike to chase the hellhole. Every issue, it feels like they're trying to sell me a toy of his friggin' motorcycle. That's not who Daken is. Now this issue kind of sort of focuses on how Hellhulk came together and why he came together. And again, it just feels like, are you just trying to sell toys? Like, it just feels like a very grim, adult-oriented book that's trying to sell me toys, because there's no humanity in the middle of any of these scenes. They're drawn incredibly well. I love this. I love the idea of a 9-panel grid where the image in the middle of the 9-panel grid has burst out of that image and is over the other images. I love any 9-panel grid where one of the panels has overgrown into the other panels. I love that convention, and I love Raphael Yanko as an artist, and I love Daken, but I don't think Benjamin Percy works on Ghost Riders or Wolverines. I think he's better on other books. I think he's been really good on the Spider-Man Predator book. And I just think because Daken now falls into that Wolverine Ghost Rider zone, I don't think Benjamin Percy understands what to do with him or what to say with him. And this is one of my favorite characters who I know a lot about. And I'm not saying he can only be written one way, but he's not being written anyway here. Hello to Black Box Comics. Hello to Black Box Comics. We do have a Black Box issue in the poll this week. Exclusive on Marvel Unlimited. It is Herbie and his Infinity comic. This is just adorable month after month. And this one, this is all by Nathan Stockman, and it plays this beat that he has a crush on the robot secretary in the lobby of the Baxter Building. And so he asks Reed to soup up his robot form so he can impress her. But of course, it all goes awry. Totally adorable, totally worth reading. There's yet another one of the Bad Bug books that finally found its way to print last week, Hypergeist. And that brings us to the end of the H's. I told you it's not a very big poll this week. I think I pretty much got all of your comments, but I will go back through to see if there are anything else. Helverine says Max Appleman wouldn't call this issue good, but I would call it stupid, and I enjoy stupid. David C. saying, I just like Machine Man and Deathlock being in a comic. And that's the thing. Benjamin Percy's Red Hulk, one of my favorite comic books in all of comics right now. I think he's doing Hulk extraordinarily, extraordinarily well. I think we've seen what he has to offer on Wolverines and Ghost Riders, and it ain't much. But I don't think that makes him a bad writer. I love his Green Arrow, and I love his Hulk. I think he's got plenty of good things to do and to show. Yeah. Let's see if anybody else chimed in with anything that I didn't get to at the time. Hayden Dune, the impossibly long and superfluous title that could have been an email. Absolutely. Jean-Remy Argueta saying, going from Cap to Daredevil, laughing my ass off. How do we get such an amazing story and this in the same week? Logan Wayne, am I saying it wrong? It's Charlemagne, like the king, right? Am I giving it too much of a shh? I don't know if you're correcting me or if somebody else mistyped it in some way. People reacting to Cap, which I think we got most of. Yeah, I think we mostly... Oh, Logan Wayne saying, I'm right. If you're black and your skin is visibly ashy, and other black folks will let you know. And I mean, I have enough, I have black friends, which is, I'm joking. It's the thing that people say. But, I had enough black friends and coworkers in the States to, have picked up on the real life ashy comments instead of just glomming onto it as a meme from the internet. And there's just something about coloring the highlights on black people's flesh tones blue that to me comes off as ashy, even though I know ashy wouldn't have a blue tinge in real life. It would just be kind of like a white silvery color. There's something about the blueness that just makes it look ashy to me. I don't know why, but it really, really bugs me. And Jean-Remy Argueta says, okay, I'm not crazy. I also found that Federico Blee coloring in Avengers iffy as well. Okay. Okay, not too much other comments. David C. saying, I dropped Minor Arcana to Lemire kind of lacking lately. And just to be clear, the book that was in this week's poll, the Arcana book, Arcana Royale, not Jeff Lemire, Colin Bunn. But then Minor Arcana, Jeff Lemire. Okay. When I was a teen, Peter was growing up alongside me. I haven't read current titles, but is Peter a teen again, a young adult, or a grown man in this title? Oh, you mean Spider-Man. Spider-Man is currently, he's always 26. He's always grad school aged. He's just been locked at that age. He's always somewhere between 23 and 27. So all of the current Spider-Man titles are current day Spider-Man titles. There's no past Spider-Man title the way that the Captain America is a past Captain America title, although the Spider-Man title did do some flashing back to when he was a teenager in the first arc, but it is set in the present day. Superjob might be the only person on the internet who prefers JR over Larraz. Oh yeah, I mean, I'm an easy mark for Pepper Larraz, so that would be a hard one to get me to choose JR over him. I don't love JR, but I never have. I didn't like him in the 90s. I didn't like him on Uncanny X-Men 305. Like, this is a long time beef I have with JR's art. I learned to love him when I finally reread all of the late 180s and 190s and early 200s of Uncanny X-Men all in a row, because I do think that's his golden era, but his style just never really appealed to me. Steiger Wild coloring JR on Dark Knight Last Crusade book is the best modern day Romita has ever looked. Really gorgeous. Ooh, I've never read that because I don't read Dark Knight stuff, but I am interested always to see different people coloring him in different ways. And then we're pretty much at the beginning of the alphabet again. Novarg saying, I just watched that Simpsons episode a few days ago where they get Mickey Rooney for Fallout Boy. Jiminy Jillikers. Okay, so, I mean, it's a short poll, so we don't have a lot to talk about. But here's a few more comments. Richard Bradley saying Herbie is a delight in the Fantastic Four movie. Not reading the comic, but I'm sure it's fun. It's just really cute. It's a really cute, like, quick hit, one joke. Nathan Stockman knows what he's doing. He can really deliver a verbal punchline and a visual punchline. So I feel like his jokes are just really, like, cool. Like, get in, get out. It's funny. The issue hit, which a lot of these Infinity comics that are, like, the short, funny ones just don't seem to be as good at, but Nathan Stockman is the perfect person to do that. Pope Romero has got a FML profile pick for me. I cannot, so again, oh no, that was this year. That better be nominated for Best New Series next year. I think the next new issue I finally get to read next week. I think it was out on July 9th, if I'm not mistaken. So I cannot wait to read it because we know how much I love FML and I cannot wait for a new issue. Thoughts on the forthcoming Buckingham Nicks vinyl? Will I be picking it up or to try as you buy thing? I mean, I have Buckingham Nicks. Or are you saying they did something new? Or because I have the original Buckingham Nicks and I've had it back when you had to get it bootlegged off of vinyl. So people don't know what we're talking about. Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham were a duo in California, like a folk pop duo, before they ever were a part of Fleetwood Mac, and they had their own band/act that was called Buckingham Nicks. But then also, and I think I've talked about this only on Omnidog's channel, but Andrew Bird, who is a violinist and singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist that I really, really love, last year did a complete re-recording of that album. And he did it with a female singer, and so she did all the Stevie Nicks parts, and they did it song for song, note for note. It's called Cunningham Bird, because she is Madison Cunningham, and he is Andrew Bird. But some of the instruments were different instrumentation, like, because he's this amazing violinist, and so some of the stuff is swapped out, and I could probably sing you that album front to back now, and I've heard it, and I've always liked it, because Fleetwood Mac is one of my favorite bands, but I love that Cunningham Bird version. There's the first song, Long Distance Winner. There's so many good ones on it. So if you want to hear a different modernized version that's still a note for note, very reverent version of Buckingham Nicks, check out that Cunningham Bird album. It's one of my favorite albums of all of 2024, actually. Yeah. Okay. People who like JR various times. Jamie C47 liked his old Marvel house style when he was copying his dad's style. His own style doesn't work for me. Nov Arg saying I loved him on Hulk, and his Spider-Man felt like a good match as well. Lance McNair, hello to you, my friend. I know I don't care about movies. I don't. It's well established. But any thoughts on the attempts at realism with comic book movies in the early 2000s versus them embracing more comic bookiness now with Superman and F4? Okay, so here's the thing I could do as a whole moment of crisis. So maybe I won't give it all away for free right here, although this show is always free to watch, which is that in a way, superhero movies went in an almost opposite direction as comics, but not really. Because if you look at superhero movies in the 80s and 90s, they were goofy. And the original Batman, but they're always... Let me try that again. Superhero movies didn't get to go through the same arc of growth as superhero comics because they're always being influenced by the comics of the day. So we never had the idea of goofy Silver Age, Golden Age superhero movies because we had superhero cartoons coming out in the 60s alongside that Silver Age stuff, and that's why they had that tone. And that's why Batman in 1989, which is such a landmark superhero movie event, had very much the tone of Batman at that time because the comics of the time influenced the movie. And so that's why I've always thought it was weird when Watchmen came out. And for the record, I like that Watchmen movie. I find it infinitely rewatchable. deal, but because I love how literal Zack Snyder took everything, which is crazy. But the thing was, you couldn't literally do Watchmen at that time because there wasn't enough of a Silver Age and early and Bronze Age of comic book movies to parody and satirize with Watchmen playing it that straight. Now, today, I feel like you could do the Zack Snyder Watchmen and it would ring better because we've come all the way back around to the point where comic book movies are kind of like allowed to be fun finally, and we didn't have to like apologize for the costumes and the colors and the suits, right? It's not like X-Men, everybody's got to be in black leather. So I think I might save more thoughts on that for a Moment of Krisis in the future because I have a whole visual and verbal essay that I could unleash about that. I need to zoom into Pope Romano's series talking about, no, I'm afraid it's going to be an FML spoiler. I know he said it's from FML, but I haven't read the issue yet. Gosh darn it. They're releasing the original Buckingham Nicks officially now. No bootleg needed. Well, I had a very good bootleg, but I think it was officially released at some point because I have a pretty good studio recording of it now, but maybe it's been remastered, in which case I will check it out. Novarg, the time has come for us to lip sync for our lives. No, wrong show. The time has come. He's going to hit the hay. Have a great continuation of my day. Till next time, kids. All right, and Gunnar Paul's recently added Heroes and Station Station to my collection of LPs. I love Station Station, one of my favorite ultra long songs. I love that intro, the da 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 da. Oh, love it. I love that song. There's so many different parts and movements. One of my favorite David Bowie songs, of course, David Bowie, hugely influential on me. Okay, let's just continue. There's nothing wrong with this show moving along at a good clip every so often. So let me bring up the covers of I to Z. Sometimes I think I should make the break a little bit further than the halfway point because sometimes I'm gaining momentum after the break and I just want to go through things quickly, and sometimes I'm losing energy after the break and I just don't feel like I can. I'm like running out of words to say, and so sometimes I think the break should be like a little bit later, but I don't know. I'll think about that. Okay. Here we go with the final issue of Immortal Thor, and this is by the regular team, Al Ewing, Jan Bazaldua, with Matt Hollingsworth on art, colors rather, and Joe Sabino on letters, but also we have a back half of it by Justin Greenwood on art. So in the last issue, Thor died. So now Thor is dead. We get some mourning and also some ramifications of the death because then Executioner makes a choice, which then has a ramification for all of Asgard because he inadvertently, because he's not really thinking about the ramifications, shatters the Rainbow Bridge in such a way that Asgard is completely cut off from the mortal realm of Earth, Midgard. And so Earth not only can't get to Asgard, but the myths of Asgard kind of immediately fade, which is an interesting thing, and I can see where Al Ewing was always driving this all along. I just think the story got too distended in the middle, and it's maybe not as immediately satisfying as this beat would have been after the second arc. But then we get Thor kind of in this underworld realm of death. I forget, it's the third heaven, Vidblane. And I really like this kind of very like rocky, rough-hewn art from Justin Greenwood, colored by Romulo Fajardo Jr., who's usually, I believe, a DC colorist who's appearing here at Marvel. I really liked it. I wouldn't want to read a whole Thor series like this, but to just be visiting Thor in the underworld, in the afterlife, in a toga, you know, which has like a hoodie on it. It really works for me here. And this played with some really fun stuff. It really like acknowledged the Donny Cates run that came right from before this in ways that you really would have had to read to fully get. And I love that Donny Cates Thor run. And it's just ends with Thor in a really interesting spot. And so I'm mildly interested to read this new Al Ewing series. I like that he's starting to think of things in pieces because I also think his Immortal Hulk, although we're always rooting for things to get to issue 50, really did undergo a shift after issue 25, and this is undergoing a shift too, and I'm kind of happy we're relaunching into a new title. I don't know if it feels essential to me, and we've just killed Thor so many times, and I get that it's baked into the character and Ragnarok and whatever, but like, I have a healthy skepticism about Thor coming back and being a regular person on Midgard yet again. I feel like we've done that. We did it at the beginning of the DeFalco run after Simonson, and it was very good. We did it at the end of the Heroes Were Born run, and then brought him back in JMS Thor. So I just think it's really hard to do that beat in a new and surprising way, but who knows? Maybe Al Ewing will take us there. I don't read JSA because it's by Jeff Lemire, and I hated it so much, but this is an utterly fantastic cover. I love that just like totally blaring red behind the logo, and I love all of the character work on the cover. This is not by the interior artist. I almost can put my finger on who it is, but I should have checked the cover credit. I don't read Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong #2, although I really do like this creative team of Brian Bucciello and Christian Duce. So here's the thing about this book, The Killer. I decided I did want to read the first series, and so I started reading it, and it is talking about comics that have a very European vibe. This is a very European-paced comic book. The first issue, it took me like 20 minutes to read, which is unusually long for me, and it was not a super long issue. And it's funny because it's a book called The Killer, but it's not a big action comic book. It's about this guy who's part of a little group of assassins who kind of just kill the people that need to be killed, whether they're good or they're bad, because it kind of keeps the balance in the world. And in their particular, I think they're in France. And but he's got a day job, and he's just working at an office because he needs a cover. It's the best way for him to be a killer. And a lot of the book is just about him going to his day job, and then he goes home to the other killers and kind of like debates with them the morality of killing good people versus killing bad people, and if they should get involved in local politics. What if they're asked to kill the mayor? Should they really kill the mayor? I found myself really fascinated by it, but it was fundamentally unbingeable because it just was such a slow, thoughtful read, and to read the whole thing would have taken me hours, which is good. We like comics that would take you hours to read, but there's no way I was going to catch up on that whole original 4 or 5 issue series and then get all the way to this one and get to the second issue. So I'm just going to leisurely read it and talk about it every time we get a new issue. Maybe I'll like read 2 for every new one there is and eventually catch up. But I am intrigued. I don't know that I love it, but I'm very intrigued by the slowness of it. Yeah. Okay. I did read Lady Baltimore #2. This is from the Curious Objects portion of Mike Mignola's universe. It is a sequel to his Lord Baltimore. And this is just a 2-issue series. In and out, quick and done. And this to me worked so much better than any of the Hellboy stuff that I've read recently, because this Lady Baltimore, like, I get who her character is. She's a very distinguished mission that is very clear. Her supporting characters are really lovable. The action is clear. I love this. I love that the women on her team are made to pledge allegiance to the main Medusa who is near death, and they've got to go rescue the kid Medusa who's going to be, elevated to being the main Medusa. And so they've kind of got to go on a mission, and they're on this mission as kind of, World War II era, freedom fighters / mystics, but they're accompanied by 2 actual Medusas who are like monsters. And so it's just a fun dichotomy of the team of like these people who usually maybe do these kind of like low super adventures and like have handguns and pistols, and then these 2 Medusas are like turning men to stone and they're killing Nazis. What's not to like? This is if you really like the Mignolaverse, but you don't understand like where to jump in the present day or what to enjoy about it or what's going to feel like immediately fun and immediately classic, this series for me really, really hit. It got in, it got out. The first issue was so great. It made me fall in love with every character. I loved the art from Bridget Connell. So good. Love the colors from Michelle Madsen. Really clear lettering by Clem Robbins. It just like really, really appealed to me. And of course, great writing by Mike Mignola and Christopher Golden. I'm sad that it's over already. Of all of the Mignola stuff, this to me is absolutely the one that I enjoy the most. And just like really good art of the Medusas that makes them scary and full of these snake hairs, but also like gives them each an individual and distinct personality from each other, which I really, really enjoyed. Okay, Marvel Zero was not original new stories. It was just all of the original stories that were in the Free Comic Book Day issues. If you missed the Free Comic Book Day issues and wanted to buy them all in one place, which I actually really, really like, because some people just miss on Free Comic Book Day, or Free Comic Book Day doesn't do, their store doesn't do that, or sometimes it just makes it hard to find things then on Comixology or on Marvel Unlimited. So I think it's a good thing, but I've already talked about all of these stories, which brings us to Medieval Spawn. Great cover. Great cover. This book, I'm just so frustrated with this book. So Medieval Spawn is so cool, and I've actually been catching up on older issues of The Scorched. And there's so much cool art and stuff for him here. Here, at least, he feels like he's a Spawn and he's doing something interesting, and his armor is so cool. But again, this story, I don't understand what it's about. We're in 3 issues, I believe, of 4, and all we get is that he's venturing through the land to avenge a city where a bunch of people got killed by some kind of demon. There's nothing essentially Medieval Spawn about it. It could be any knight, it could be any devil knight or hell knight that's in any continuity anywhere. And there's also this story of like the monks that don't think that a hell knight should be doing good things, like duh, it just feels like this could be anything. It could be Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. There's nothing specific, and it kills me because Marco Itri's doing really good work on the art. It's got one of my favorite colorists who's largely unsung, Ulysses Arola, doing the colors. I just think the craft of it is so, so high, and the script is letting me down, and I'm starting to have a come to Jesus moment with these McFarlane books. None of them are very good. Like, I've now been reading for a solid 6 months every single McFarlane title, and I'm starting to think it's a scam because I don't think anybody cares about story over there, or if they do, they need somebody who's better at it than they are to edit them, and I don't think that person is Thomas Healy, because he's got to be meaner. He's got to be a meaner editor to these people, because this stuff barely hangs together. Great art. Great art. Okay. I don't read Null Hunter from Michael Walsh, an Olympus saga telling a space punk version of Hercules. I did read the final issue of Plague House. Now, if you recall, last month, this Michael Conrad and Dave Chisholm series, I was not interested in the direction it was going. We had a really cool Ghost Hunter kind of vibe in the first 2 issues. Then there was the big turnaround, and we discovered that our main character, who was a ghost hunter, was actually responsible for a lot of the deaths we were seeing in the series in order to try to appease those ghosts. Then we get to this issue, and it took such a weird left turn that I don't even know how to explain it. Basically, it starts out by saying these locations have divans. Is it the ghosts that are haunting me, or the locations themselves? Maybe it's the trauma of the location that is the ghost. So cool. Love that idea. Really, really great. But then for some reason, it pivots into this guy who's been our main character, who's been doing kind of like secret murders to avenge things on behalf of the ghosts. He basically just starts murdering a bunch of capitalists. And there's like a very clear trace right off the screen lift of the Luigi Mangione assassination of the CEO of United Healthcare. But they're basically saying that it's this guy. And because he's been killing people because of the ghosts, now he's killing CEOs. And then he gets caught. And then they're like, and he's like, oh no, maybe I shouldn't have been caught. It was just that's not what this book has ever been about. It was about this guy who was on TV and had a TV show because he was pretending that he was hunting ghosts and exorcising them, but the really thing he was really doing was getting revenge on behalf of ghosts. And I understand that there's a revenge link, a revenge connection to him, like getting revenge on the people ruining our society through capitalism, but it's just such a tenuous link, and it just doesn't feel like it has anything to do with anything that happened so far, that I was just so puzzled. And I would have been interested in reading this book if I signed up for it, but it is such an utter failure of storytelling and imagination to get to here from where we were in the first 3 issues, that this was just like a 0 out of 5 stars. I was like, what the actual fuck is happening the entire time I was reading? The art was still good, it was still written okay, but the plot made no kind of sense, and I was so confused. Hello to Hank, who has just dropped in. Yeah, it was just a strangely puzzling issue. Unfortunately, I can't recommend this comic, even though I loved the number 1. So puzzling, and I struggled with it. I don't read Power Rangers books, but this is Power Rangers Prime, number 8. I don't read Resurrection Man Quantum Karma because it's from Black Label, and also I just thought it tremendously sucked, and everybody else liked it, and sometimes it's something I think is truly, truly horrible and 0 stars, and 99 out of 100 people are enjoying it. I just have to understand that I need to step away. Plus, I really respect Ram V and his wonderful hair. I did read Risk from Black Box Comics, and this is a book that I've been having a lot of fun with. It's written by D.G. Chichester, of course we all know, is a Daredevil writer from the 90s, pencils and inks. Bless me. From Ate Sway, as they say en français. From Mannix Francisco, colors from Lorenzo Berdondini, what a name, and letters from Leo McGovern. So you just cannot come for the art in this series. It's so good. Every page, the characters are so expressive, the figures are so full and bold. I am an immediate fan of Mannix Francisco. I don't know if I've read anything by them before, but I would absolutely read anything else by them. This has Risk and the crew kind of breaking into this mega heist that supposedly has some kind of medical device that this guy needs to cure his daughter. And Risk, she's not really like a hacker or a Ocean's 11 thief. She's really just somebody who runs the odds, right? The whole point is that everybody in this world has these cybernetic graphs, and her cybernetic graph just has an AI that runs the odds that she developed as a proprietary system, but now it's just installed in her brain. And so she's not really an action hero, and she relies kind of on her crew to do the action hero things. And I think that was the fun part about this, because we got to see her crew at a point before this, some of them kind of seemed like a little bit kind of bumbling, and here we get to see that like they have a use. They all have things they do, and she's not the master of every situation because she's not actually really like a badass superhero. She just reads the odds, and especially when her software is not quite working right, she's not reading the odds perfectly, and so she's making poorer and poorer decisions. Now, this kind of at a few moments where the narrative just didn't really track to me, where like characters would all show up somewhere and they would be like, we're doing this thing now, and you'd be like, what are we? I thought we were breaking into this place to get this medical device, but now it seems like we're doing this totally other thing. And I just think that that, unfortunately, is a little bit of a weakness for D.G. Chichester on a series that I've otherwise been greatly enjoying. And especially, again, this art is so incredible. Black Box Comics always comes through with great art on every issue. Honestly, they're one of the most quality comics publishers that I've read anything by this year. I just think this story had a few loose ends that I think somebody with the veteran status of D.G. Chichester should know better. But the art in the storytelling, absolutely fantastic. Sam and Twitch Case Files. This is yet another Spawn Universe title. This one's written by Jordan Barrell with the terrifying credit that Todd McFarlane contributed additional script. It's drawn by Thomas Nelchik, colors from FCO Placencia and Sheila Saldana, letters from Tom Orzechowski. We already know how much I hate the lettering in this book. I cannot keep talking about it. The thing is, this book is the strongest when it does two things. When it allows itself to be a police procedural, and when Sam and Twitch are together. This almost gets here. There's some really cool police procedural stuff, and I really love the paneling from Thomas Nelchik about it that still gave it dimension and movement in the story, as Sam is just trying to like desperately make something out of this case where he knows the people who made the drug, who are making the undead people that almost killed Twitch, and Twitch had to shoot but really didn't shoot him because he was undead, he was already dead. And Sam is like, if you just give me a warrant, I can figure it out. But he can't get a warrant, so Sam is like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna do things the hard way, and I'm gonna have to go and do some police work. And so that part works for me, but there's just so many scenes, and again, similar to what I said about that risk issue, there's so many scenes where the scene happens and there's no reason for it to happen. Like, he's in this apartment building with this detective who's temporarily acting as his partner, and he's there because it's owned by the woman from the tech company, and maybe they have an off-site data center there, and he has a key card to the server, but he doesn't know where the server is, and if he could find the server, he could get on it. But instead, which is a lot of interesting plot, and I know it all because I've been taking notes, but the scene just plays out of like, hey, let's just go to this place and look at an apartment, and this temporary partner's like, why are we looking at the apartment? He's like, not because I want to move into a new apartment. And it kind of just doesn't ever state why it's a part of the story, and I'm fine. It's not like we're talking about like a metaphorical hard to read comic book here, but it just feels like so many of these scenes you've got to like squint and sift and dig through so much to understand why the scene is happening, and that happened multiple times in this issue. Again, who is on the quality control, quality assurance at Todd McFarlane Productions? This is a book with fantastic art, with characters that are really different from anything else that's being done in comic books right now. There's just no other police procedural in comics right now. And there's no reason this shouldn't be great, but there's just somebody who is not looking at these books while they go out, and the books are coming out with easy to fix problems, easy to edit around problems, easily scripted around a couple of changes problems. And also, I don't even want to get into all the bad decisions, the lettering, where if somebody just dragged some of the lettering 2 pixels to the left, the lettering would look better than it does on the page right now. I just really feel like there is no adult awake at the candy store right now at Todd McFarlane Productions. So we get this, I mean, but again, this book can get away with scenes like this. I like him having this, very testy discussion at this fundraiser where it's like, they're like, you got to back off, man, as a policeman and as Twitch's partner, like, this is not the place for you to ask these questions. This is one of the only books in comics that can like make this kind of scene work, but the quality just is not there. We're getting really close to a full line drop of Todd McFarlane Productions. As of this week, I'm just tired. It's been 6 months, and I feel like I'm making excuses for this guy to make terrible comics when somebody in his cadre of people, somebody in his company should like sit him down and have a serious talk about how bad they are. But I know I'm part of the problem because I keep buying them, so I might just have to stop buying them. Speaking of which, we come to The Scorched. Now, here's the positive thing I can say for The Scorched. John Layman, who is an incredible writer, it's felt like he's been given the direction for the past 6 issues to not do anything, because there's been so much other stuff happening in the Spawn universe with the opening up of the Dead Zones that it felt like he couldn't write any of these characters because all of them were about to show up in Spawn, and that's been a whole arc of that. Finally here, we get to a point where it feels like he's allowed to write them again, and it's so joyous. Steven Segovia, who's been drawing this title from the beginning, gets to show She-Spawn in action, which we just haven't been seeing. They go and break up a place that has an open hellgate, and they think that it's just to let demons in, but they actually realize that it's to ferry weapons back and forth from hell. This is the reason that I'm reading Todd McFarlane production books. This is actually interesting. Like, this is a book that nobody else can do with characters that nobody else has. They're not just Venoms, they're all connected to hell. They're all hellish characters. And then to play this beat that we're like getting weapons run out of hell into the real world, that's cool. You can do something with that. And I just feel like John, even though there's the dreaded Todd McFarlane additional script credit on this one, that it does feel like there's somewhere that this book can go and it has legs, and John Layman on his own is a qualified enough writer instead of all these various Todd McFarlane hangers on. I'm sorry guys, I don't mean to say anything nasty about you, but it just doesn't feel like anybody's got any really fun original ideas or things to say. It all just feels like it's echoes of McFarlane. But I also want to go back to this comment by Hank, since we're in the McFarlane universe anywhere right now with all these books in a row about these lettering. This is a hallmark of the Sam and Twitch books from time immemorial. They've always looked like this. And on a page like this, it can work. Like, I do think that there's something that just makes it a little bit more gritty and real and a little bit less comic booky to take away the word balloons. And on a page like this with a lot of blank space in the background, the artist is really giving them space to work. Even that first one where it's on the middle of like a column that's black in the middle, it's not the worst. Although again, I think you could have moved that lettering over just a little bit and it could have looked much better. But there are some pages where it really just feels like a struggle. This page, again, this totally works. Lettering found spots in each of the panels where it's not really competing with anything. Although again, that one in the bottom left panel, if you just move that up about 10 pixels, it would have probably read better than reading over the edge of the door frame. So it just feels weird to me. Like, it doesn't feel like anybody's looking at this book before it goes out the door. And this lettering can work. It has worked in the past. People like it for a specific reason, but it feels like there's no like production artist who is like looking at this one final time and asking any tough questions about it along the way. Okay. See, I wasn't going to go off about the lettering, but I still did anyway. Now we come to Secret Six, and this is Secret Six issue number 5. And this is a title that I've been a little bit hard on, especially hard on the writer, Nicole Maines, who is the actress that does Dreamer on TV, now writing Dreamer in comic books. Also, this has an artist who I typically do not really like, Roger Cruz, because to me, he was always kind of the dim imitator of Joe Madureira in the 90s, and I didn't even like Joe Mad that much, so I certainly didn't like Roger Cruz, and I haven't been liking Nicole Maines' writing for this, so I really was dreading it. Well, guess what? This was actually kind of sort of maybe the best issue of Secret Six so far. And it's interesting because I said that about the last issue too. And the last issue only focused on John Kent and Catman. And I was like, maybe the problem all along has been Nicole Maines just writing Dreamer and like not giving us enough Dreamer's personality, because she's like, well, I write in the voice, so I don't have to give you personality. Almost the opposite of how Iman Vellani is writing Kamala Khan when she gets to write her. But in this issue, finally, there was a Dreamer who was sympathetic. There's Dreamer who seemed like she had actual goals. There's a Dreamer whose powers made sense. And it really brings to a head how much these characters hate Amanda Waller, and with very, very good reason. But before that, it kind of trended almost to being Suicide Squad again. Like, I get that we've got Secret Six characters here, but I just don't understand why this book is called Secret Six. Like, they kind of say a couple times, and we were the Secret Six, you know, like, give us that title right there in the dialogue. But it just really kind of feels like a reverse Suicide Squad book where the squad is trying to decide if they're going to blow Amanda Waller's head off. And you know what? It totally works. And this really surprised me by like making Waller an active character in the book as she's still imprisoned for all of her crimes as part of Absolute Power. It just really, really worked. It took a few issues to get there. Maybe it was just kind of like a finding your footing here, but I actually am really enjoying this at this part. And I would have never, you could have given me 200 guesses, and I never could have guessed that this was Roger Cruz's art. I totally was surprised, and just like a really distinct style all of his own. There's nobody current present day that I could really compare it to. It's just like a really fun, good look. Logan Wayne agreeing was very much a Joe Mad clone during the X-Men run that he was on. I did not read Sisterhood, a Hyde Street story, because I don't read Hyde Street from Jeff Johns, I should say. Ghost Machine, I did, however, read the final issue of Spider-Gwen, the Ghost Spider, although it's relaunching with the exact same creative team in less than a month. So this is written by Stephanie Phillips with art from Von Randall, and then some additional art at the end by Paolo Villanelli, who's the main artist on this title. Colors from Matt Milla, letters from Ariana Maher. This resolves the story of this whole 15-issue series, which is that Gwen inadvertently came to be in the possession of the Cosmic Cube and merges with the Cube. So she's kind of had cosmic powers all along, which is why she's in the 616. It's why everybody's so interested in her. But what I found most interesting is that it makes very real that TVA series that we recently have from Catherine Blair was absolutely canonical for Gwen's this version of Gwen Stacy, and it was probably happened for her in between the first and second arcs of her book, because the second arc of her book rolls right into the third arc, because we get the Gambit and the Captain Carter from that series here. Now, I'll say, interestingly, Von Randall, not an artist that I dislike, not really Marvel house style, almost here reminded me a little bit of Jay Lee in the way that he's drawing Gambit. I don't know that he draws the best Spider-Gwen in action. His best Spider-Gwen moments were these moments where she's in her own mind that were just nice and clean, where we could really get a clean look at her costume on a plain background. Anytime she was in action, it was kind of muddy, which I think also is a color thing, but we've seen good colors from Matt Miller before. I think it's an art thing for Von Randall. Story-wise, this did a very interesting beat that I didn't love for a specific reason, which is that basically Gwen is talking to the Cosmic Cube in her head, and the Cosmic Cube is like, you have the power of the universe, so you could change anything about the situation that you want. And so Gwen is like, oh, so I can give it a different ending? Here's the thing. We already have Gwenpool. So I think it's fine to have a Cosmic Cube beat with Gwen. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's fine to take her into space to give her one cosmic power story. It's a long-time trend to do Spider-Man-esque stories with Spider-Gwen, and that is a major Spider-Man story from the 90s when he had briefly cosmic power for one arc. But to then kind of take it to a Gwenpool place where she's narrating how she's like, ooh, what would be a good ending for the story? I just think that the lines between the brands of these various Gwens we have start to get a little bit too blurry here, and I just don't think that's who she is, Stephanie Phillips. I just really don't know that Stephanie Phillips understands who Gwen is. And then we get to the end of this issue and we find out that she used the Cosmic Cube, spoilers, but I'm just going to say it, to cover your ears if you don't want to know, that she used the Cosmic Cube to move her whole life, including her father, Captain Stacy, apparently to the 616 universe. That is not who Spider-Gwen is. We do not need to do a full Miles Morales with her to bring her to the 616. Even in the scope of the Spider-Verse movies that are popularizing her, she's from a different Earth. It doesn't make any sense to have her be on the main 616 universe Earth. She always should be a fish out of water. She should always be temporarily visiting. So, look, I'm happy to get a relaunch of this series. I think Paolo Villanelli's art really, really pleases me. I can't wait to see him draw more of Spider-Gwen just in New York being Spider-Gwen. But I think I just don't know that we're going to go any more useful with Stephanie Phillips writing this book. And who knows, this with Spider-Gwen being as popular as she is in other media, this truly, as this next book shows, I mean, she's on a cartoon, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. There's great music from Patrick Stump of Fall Out Boy. But I just don't know that I believe that Stephanie Phillips has anything that I want to hear said about this character, even though Stephanie Phillips wrote a couple good issues in here. I'm just really skeptical that she's taken it in a direction this character needs to go in. Kane has the first trade of the current Spider-Gwen one, which I really liked. I liked that first trade, and haven't read the TVA book yet, which is really trade 1.5, honestly. And I'm glad it's part of her current run, and I know where it's places. It is good to know. There's a moment of crisis somewhere in this whole rebooting with the same creative team thing that Marvel are on. Do they not have faith in their audience or creators or both? Well, we'll talk about more when we get to the W's and we talk about the reboot of Deadpool into Wolverines and Deadpool. So now we have Star Wars Hyperspace Stories, and this is a book that is from Dark Horse, which handles some of the more YA style and kind of one-off style Star Wars books. And this is a story of a early adventure of Dameron Poe before he gets to the events in the sequel trilogy. I'm sometimes hard on some of these hyperspace stories because I don't really understand sometimes if they have a reason to exist. They kind of just feel like somebody pitched a Star Wars story and they know somebody will buy a Star Wars thing, so they did it. This one to me feels specific enough that it should exist. Like, I do want to see the kind of missions that Poe Dameron went on before he appears in the movies. I do want to see how much trust General Leia had in him. And I think that Ethan Sachs is writing a very fun, quick-moving story that is it's just fun to read. And I think that, to me, is what's missing from a lot of these Star Wars kind of B books from Dark Horse, these hyperspace stories miniseries. They're just not fun. Like to me, what these short Star Wars limited series should be like hilarious, fun, little episodic cartoons of the world of Star Wars that still make sense in canon. The other one, the Bad Batch one, is not fun at all. This one is fun. Penciled by Mark Yaza. Really fun action. I mean, it's just a chase sequence. It's just stormtroopers chasing Poe, and that's fine. And it's fun. Inked by Jose Marzan Jr., colored by Nicola Rai, and lettered by friend of the channel, Tyler Smith with Jimmy Betancourt. Just really a fun kind. If you have kids in your life, or younger readers, not even kids, but like 11 or 12-year-olds who like Star Wars, although I think all the Marvel books would be fine for a 12-year-old who likes Star Wars, or if you just want to read a fun, cartoonish take on Star Wars, I think this book will scratch the itch. Speaking of scratching the Star Wars itch, this was almost my Marvel pick of the week. I do not know how to explain to you how good this comic book is, and the amount of internal conflict I have with the fact that that goodness is coming from Mark Guggenheim. And you know what? It's not just because Madibek Muzbekov is one of the best artists in the industry. It is literally great comic writing by Mark Guggenheim. By the way, colored by Luis Guerrero, lettered by Eisner winner Clayton Cowles. This issue, first of all, Mark Guggenheim is doing something that I think is very smart in the current market, which is doing one-off stories with little tickles of plot that can come together later, because you could do 100 issues of one-off stories about the prequel Jedi Knights. This centers two people that we have not spent a lot of time with in the movies, Sierra Longa and also Yaddle, who is the other Yoda creature that we really haven't seen a lot in the live action, but she's always been part of Star Wars lore, and this is happening just before the prequels, so we get the two of them being a part of mediating a trade dispute, which we kind of hear like this is what Jedi do, which is like a really cool wink at setting up eventually the escalation of the trade dispute that culminates in the first movie, Phantom Menace, because this says this years before the Battle of Naboo, and they're on a totally different planet, Liskin, but also they have to do some work with Count Dooku, who has already left the Jedi Order here, but he's got his lightsaber. He's not in a full-on fight with Yaddle here. They're just having a one-time dispute about something, but it just is this really interesting beat about like, what do you do with somebody who was a Jedi? What does it mean to be a former Jedi in this world where the Jedi are fully in their decadent phase, about to experience the fall? Like, why would you not want to be a Jedi? And like, spoilers that we already know. We know why Dooku's not a Jedi, because he's actually on the Sith side, but they don't know that. And so it's so smart. There's so many levels. The art is so good. The likeness is so there. The color choices are so good. The letters are just so easy to read. This is a fantastic comic book. If you like Star Wars, you need to be reading Star Wars Jedi Knights. This has been 5 issues, 4 of which have been completely outstanding and excellent, one of which has been just okay, but still had great artwork. This is a bombshell of an amazing Star Wars book, and I really hope we're going to see the typical 50 issues that we get from a lot of Star Wars runs on it. I really wanted to read this Tales of the Frog Knight. It looked so adorable. I just couldn't find it digital, but I want to read a little Frog Knight on a little pirate ship. He looks so cute. I don't read Teen Titans Go, which is out in support of the new Teen Titans Go cartoon, which brings us to the screaming portion of our show as we get to Ultimate Wolverine. This is written by Chris Condon with main artist back Alessandro Cappuccio, colors from Brian Valenza, and letters from Corey Petit. So here's the thing. We did this first arc where Wolverine is the Winter Soldier and he does very bad things. And that is such a cool beat. There was so much to write about there. But 2 of the issues were completely squandered because we just did those 2 issues where we're just in Wolverine's head and there's useless narration. And so basically we only get to see him do like 2 missions. We see him kill Nightcrawler and Mystique in the first issue, and then we see him be thwarted by Gambit and Kitty Pryde in the 3rd issue. And that's really it. And now he's been de-brainwashed and he's not the Winter Soldier anymore. And I know that part of that is because we're just creaking towards all of the Ultimate Universe ending, although we'll see if it really ends when all of the main original titles hit issue number 24, which is going to be in like January. So I get that, Chris Condon had to hurry up here, but it just feels like to have such a great concept as Wolverine, as the Winter Soldier, and to have 2 issues that just flat out sucked, were some of the worst issues that came out this year, and to now just have him be good guy Wolverine again, it just feels like, what are we even doing here? What was the point of the concept of this book? And now we're just getting all the same beats we've had 100 times before. It's Wolverine and Sabretooth arguing. It's a bunch of X-Men talking in a meeting about which of them are going to go on a mission, and Agent Brand is there, and Beast is there, and Gambit is there, and Kitty's there. Who the fuck cares? Is that all that the universe is? Is that all Ultimate Universe comics are? Is just an never-ending cascade of cameo appearances about characters that we've been wondering who they would be in the Ultimate Universe. You know, I'm glad that that makes you happy, and I'm glad if that sells comic books, but that's not what comic book writing is about. That's worse than these retcon series that are just pushing one nostalgia button over and over again for the Chris Claremont period or the Daredevil Black Armor period, because this actually isn't based on a story that we love. This is just based on getting people excited about one character walking on screen and saying, it's Kitty Pryde. And then the audience goes, oh, Kitty Pryde! And I just don't... that's not that. It's just like walk-on cameos in a. It's like when Cher was on Will and Grace. Like that's all that is. There's no actual laugh there. There's no actual story there. But you know what? That's what Marvel movies are right now. They're just turning into a cameo fest where people walk on screen and everybody applauds. So why not just do that in the comic books too? I refuse to pretend like this is a good comic book. You cannot gaslight me into thinking the Ultimate Universe is good, because this is all that it is. This is all that this comic book has been doing. This is all that Ultimates has been doing. Spider-Man has turned into an absolute catastrophe where Hickman doesn't know which way is up. Black Panther can't write its way out of a box. Ultimate X-Men is very wisely doing something that has nothing to do with any of the rest of them. This line has been an utter disaster from about issue 6 onward of every single book in it, because all it is a stupid cameo fest, and there's no story anywhere. It's just a cameo fest as comics. And you know what? The market is so rotten right now, and fans are so stupid right now, that everybody will just pick it up and applaud it, even though it is some of the worst comics out there. DC is spanking this, not only with their Absolute Universe, but they're spanking it just with any old book that comes out from DC in any old week, because DC understands what making good comics is, and that was absolutely visible in the Eisner nominations and the Eisner wins. Marvel is in a crap ton of crap right now, and to pretend like this is the line that's exciting and new at Marvel right now, this is the least exciting, least new, most cynical, worst line of comic books right now, and there's not a single book that's doing anything interesting, and certainly Ultimate Wolverine is the worst among all of them at all of those crimes and sins, and I totally hate it. I don't think it should exist, and I think everybody who's working on it should be ashamed of everything that they've done. Okay. Under the Floorboards. Really cool cover. Totally into it. Didn't read it. I don't read The Walking Dead Deluxe, which is the colorized version of Walking Dead. I almost went back and read Warm Fusion from Delistery, and but then I remembered I hated the first issue, and that's why I dropped it, so that's why I don't read it. I don't read Whatever Happened to Crimson Justice because it's a Frank Terry comic, and I do love myself at least a little bit. You gotta love yourself before you love anybody else. However, I did read Wolverines and Deadpools. Now, we all know that on this channel, I am a fan of Cody Ziglar. I am a huge fan of Cody Ziglar's Deadpool. And to see Cody Ziglar's Deadpool end with issue 15 last week, and then come back for a 3-issue run of Wolverines and Deadpools was a little puzzling to me. I'm like, why not just have that be the last 3 issues of that original book? But then I put on my Galaxy brain, and I thought about it, and here it does make sense, even though it's the exact same creative team relaunching the book, because that first 15 issues was a complete story. And as much as I love books that run 100 issues, as much as I wished that Deadpool could have just continued running from the Scotty Young run into the Kelly Thompson run, into the Eliza Wrong run, into the Cody Ziglar run, I do think in the current market there is something to be said, not just for relaunching with number ones, but telling complete stories. Because I see the conversations that people are having around the internet around like, what should I pick up? Can I just get that? Will it make sense to me? So I think to be able to package that Ziglar run as like, this is one 15-issue story about Kid Deadpool and Death Grip, I think that's something positive. And so this, even though it's the same book with the same tone and the same creators, to spin this off as its own 3-issue story, I do kind of understand it. Not only do I understand it, but this was really, really good. First of all, Roger Antonio, just amazing. The art alteration of the 2 primary artists on this book is absolutely incredible. The way he draws Lara and Logan here is absolutely outstanding. The coloring from Guru EFX, I have to say, in past years, I never really thought of Guru EFX as like one of my go-to favorite colorists, but I just love that he's got so many books right now that are like, I'm reading the book for the colors. Now, I'm reading this for a lot of different things, but the colors on the Wolverines here, come on. The way he's doing the blue and gold on Logan here, it's just absolutely incredible. And of course, still bringing all the great pops of red anytime we get somebody on Team Deadpool, including Princess. And I, of course, love the way that Roge Antonio draws Princess the symbiote dog. And there's like a really good, really fun story here that Deadpool is so excited to take this mission, not just because, you know, it's a city that the children are being killed in the night or kidnapped in the night, but also it's a chance for team up with Wolverine, who he loves. They have a whole separate book, Deadpool and Wolverine, that maybe this should have been an arc of that book. Maybe we could get into that later, but he wants his daughter to have her very first team up. So of course there's tons of hilarious fourth wall breaks throughout this issue where he is like joking about like, oh wow, do you think we could get a Marvel Legends toy of Ellie? Or like, oh wow, it's going to be Ellie's first Deadpool team up. Like, it made me laugh. The art was incredible. The story was good. Cody Ziegler writes the ever-living hell out of the two Wolverines. I think I would love to see Cody Ziegler in a book, writing a book about either or both of these Wolverines. And it was just like a really great Deadpool issue. Now, I didn't love the final page reveal of the villain. And I will say the first 3 pages that set up the villain kind of felt a little bit generic. Like, okay, we've seen this scene in 100 comic books before. So those are the only like slight deductions off of it being a perfect comic book. But in terms of what I want from a Deadpool comic and what I want from a Deadpool and Wolverine comic, this runs circles around that other Deadpool Wolverine comic that's out right now. And if you love any of the 4 characters that I'm showing on the screen right now, I think there's a strong chance that you would like this comic book. It's Deadpool done well, and it is the Wolverines done well, all in one book. Truly charming stuff. Now we come to a book that I talked a lot of trash about in my write-up for it as I was writing the Crushing Crisis coverage of the books this week, which was X-Men number 19, which has Jed MacKay following up on Doug Ramsey being the next chosen of Apocalypse, which is something that we saw in the Hair of Apocalypse series at the end of Krakoa before the Tom Brevoort from the Ashes era of X-Men books began. This is by Jed MacKay with pencils from Netho Diaz, inks from Sean Parsons, colors from First Fuentes Sojo, and letters by Eisner Winter, Clayton Gals. Let's get one thing out of the way. The colors are horrible. I don't like... He colored Warlock really well. Hated all the flesh tones. Hated the choices of the shininess. I don't understand how you could have Doug's face in shadow, but also with so many shiny highlights. It's just wrong. The colors just didn't make any sense. First Senses Sujo, I think, goes a little too gray. Not one of my favorite colorists. That said, I had a lot of skepticism that there was anything to do with this Doug as Apocalypse beat, and I just thought, but I forgot. I forgot Jed MacKay's game. I forgot how good Jed MacKay is at taking weird, bad, discarded, hurried plot beats, which is absolutely what that Era of Apocalypse series was. It was just like, what can we get out while you still are getting ready to start from the ashes? And they just threw it out the door and it made no sense. And I love that Netho Diaz gets to draw this because he was the artist of that series and he gets to kind of redeem that he was on that series, which was not that great, by continuing the story here in a way that makes sense. So yeah, Jed MacKay just writes a fascinating issue. It all is on Doug, Warlock, and Bay the Blood Moon, and as they live in this little house, and they're trying to come up, the 3 of them, with this idea of what does it mean for Doug to be the most fit? What does it mean for him to be the chosen of Apocalypse? And they kind of play this beat of like, yeah, I'm buff now because Apocalypse made me fit, and in his mind, being fit is being fit. But it also plays this really interesting big beat that Doug not only now has his own power, which is the universal translation power, but he's kind of been like Apocalypse supercharged, that now his words get universally translated to everybody, and they're inspiring to everybody and can motivate them or cause them to do whatever he wants them to do, which is kind of like the supercharged Omega version of his power. And like, I just never rolled my eyes. Usually when there's developments like this in X-Men, I'm like, oh, but Jed MacKay just handles it so deftly. And there is a little bit of an undercurrent of like, how much do we believe that Warlock and Bay the Blood Moon fully have agency over themselves in this situation? I think we're led to believe that they do, but it's a very thin line to walk. 'Cause it's kind of like a Purple Man thing. If everybody does everything you say, do you ever have people near you who are not doing what you say? If somebody loves you, do they genuinely love you? And I think we do think that Bay the Blood Moon genuinely loves Doug, but it's a very interesting line. And I just love that Jed MacKay again and again goes into Doug talking about the ethics of the situation, even as there's a strike team there to try to assassinate him before he can decide what he's going to do with this apocalyptic power. Does it make me more interested to read about the Age of Revelation? And since Doug's name is Revelation, clearly it's going to have to do with him. No, it does not, because I do not care about a 10 years flash forward unless the X-Men is always going to be flash forward from 10 years to 10 years forward from here on out, in which case, fine, I'll read it. But we all know it's a gimmick, and I will not fall for that. However, this issue, if you've been like, honestly, if you are the kind of person who could get hyped for that, or if you just want to see the idea of Doug as Apocalypse done well, which seemed absolutely impossible to begin with, this would be an issue to read because I really, really enjoyed it. But I don't know why you get Ryan Stegman to draw the cover colored by Marta Gracia, because I think it's pretty ugly. But sometimes you put Ryan Stegman covering a book when you have Netho Diaz doing better art on the inside. Okay, this was such a weird issue. So this collected, it's called The Uncanny X-Men Prelude to a Future Past. And it's credited as issue 140.5 because it has a story that Chris Claremont did for a collection a few years ago that acted as a prologue to the original Days of Future Past, which then this also reprints. And he did that with his longtime collaborator of Salvador Larroca, who of course worked on with him through all of Extreme X-Men. Larroca sometimes in the modern day is phoning it in a little bit, and his art looks very tracey. We saw some really lazy stuff from him on some Star Wars books earlier this year that was literally traced. This is him on his A game. Every single page here was cool. It was like actually rendered. It wasn't like weirdly over shaded in a way just that like took everything away. It didn't look totally traced. It looked like cool, big, dynamic, fun pages, as good as I've ever seen his art look. Now, keep in mind, this was originally released and drawn almost 5 years ago, so it's not Salvador Larroca of today. It's him of 5 years ago, but even comparing to stuff that he was doing 5 years ago, like that Doom series that he did, this is some of the best art I think I've ever seen from him. And it's lettered by Eisner winner Clayton Cowles and colored by Guru EFX. So I basically am in love with this whole team here. But also, it's Chris Claremont writing the liberation of Rachel Summers from the Hounds program that would set up the story of Days of Future Past. Now, Chris Claremont does his things that he does, okay? He has a bunch of psychic warrior women go into the astral plane and have psychic knives. We know that he's going to do that. He inexplicably brings in Jean Grey in a way that doesn't seem to make total sense with the story of the original Days of Future Past. Fine. It's really hard to say that this is definitively in continuity because Chris Claremont makes some truly puzzling decisions here, but nothing about it is bad. It's absolutely readable. It's Chris Claremont at his kind of like dire future best. He created this whole genre for the X-Men. The Age of Revelation wouldn't exist without Chris Claremont doing this. And Larroca, again, I don't know if I've ever seen him look this good. This was like as good as he was on Matt Fraction's Iron Man that he did the entire run on. That to me is probably my favorite long-term Salvador Larroca book. This is as good as that. So what a weird singular issue. I don't know if it totally makes sense in continuity. I am not here to judge that. But here's the thing, Ellen. He does die at the start of Days of Future Past, but this is set just as they are breaking Rachel out of the Hounds program. So it happens like probably weeks and weeks and weeks before Days of Future Past, because in Days of Future Past, she's just one of the many people who are kind of like there with them in their concentration camp that they're in. So clearly a lot of things had happened before that. There's just continuity things that don't make sense. Like Kitty talks about how Rachel is her great friend, but in the reality of Days of Future Past, would Kitty have been friends with Rachel? I thought that was a change to the timeline. There's just some timey-wimey strange continuity stuff that I'm sure in Claremont's mind makes sense. I just don't know if I understand. But yeah, great Rachel issue, and I'm a massive Rachel fan. Rachel, they just announced finally a Marvel Legends of her in the red suit with the spikes, and she has the Phoenix wings and everything. I will buy that. Even though I don't buy Marvel Legends, you better believe you're going to see a Rachel Summers Marvel Legend in the background. Okay, now we come to the final book of the week. I'm not setting the timer because who are we kidding? I'm not going to do a minute here. This, actually, I might do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes about this book because it has 9 different creative teams on it that were all from the individual X-Men books. Gosh, I wish One Wheelchair X was here because I really wanted to actually just get him to join the stream and talk about it too. Okay, so here's the idea. First of all, you have to thank the Hellfire Gala, which we had in 2021, 2022, and 2023, and 2024 was the end. Really wasn't happening yearly for the X-Men. For the X-Men, it was like a party that was happening like every single month or like at least quarterly because it wasn't like Krakoa went on for years and years and years, right? So they kind of come to the first cadence that they would have had a Hellfire Gala, and they realize that they want to remember Krakoa in some way. And what's so interesting about this is it's one of the first times that the entire line of writers is allowed to say positive things about Krakoa. It really feels like editorially they have been told shit on Krakoa. You got to make Krakoa look bad by comparison, because that's like what the selling point of From the Ashes has been. And so really only in NYX issue number 3 did we ever get any kind of positive reflection on anything that happened in Krakoa. And that felt like one of the best issues we've got in all of From the Ashes, because it kind of acknowledged that very few of these characters would think it was such a bad thing. It's such a weird editorially mandated idea. So we start off with Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly returning to their NYX characters, and unfortunately there's just some problems with this. Javier Garron, totally fine artist, very weird fit for this. I guess maybe the artists that worked with them on their run weren't available, but also the coloring was so off that I couldn't even tell like who was what character, because they were all just colored so weirdly. And again, this is first Fuentes Shoujo. I've seen them do okay stuff. They're just not my I'm using they them because I don't know their gender. I don't think they make really smart choices. I don't think there's anything like systemically bad about their coloring, like with Federico Blee, but just on a page like this could have been colored so much more simply and it would have read so much better. But Lansing and Kelly kind of said all they have to say about the idea of Krakoa, and so they're trying to like continue writing Kamala Khan to be like, well, I barely knew Krakoa at all, but here I am celebrating with other mutants. This is so weird for me to be a part of this community that I never got to enjoy the loves that they enjoyed. They just do not know who Kamala Khan is. Somebody smack the pencil out of their hand and stop letting them write for Kamala. So then the next scene we get, and he writes a lot of the connective scenes through this book, we get Jed MacKay writing here with Netho Diaz, who is his artist also on X-Men. And these scenes are great. They look good. The voices are right. Basically, all of the X-Men that are in the Alaska X-Men are like, we're going to the Hellfire Vigil because it's a chance to remember, but also have a little bit of a party and celebration. And Scott, Stick in the Mud Summers, is like, no, man, the world is bad. We should be sad. Krakoa failed, and now everything sucks, and I'm not going there. And Psylocke, Quanon, this Psylocke, really gives him a talking to of like, Scott, you're the leader of the X-Men. Do you not think that sitting out the biggest mutant celebration since the last Hellfire Gala sends a poor message? And I just love that, because I love that we've gotten this like fully formed character of Quanon, and she's a leader, and she has some opinions about Scott as a leader. And I just think that that was really, really cool. All of the Jed MacKay scenes in this made me think like, wow, I've maybe been looking the gift horse in the mouth a little bit with Jed MacKay writing X-Men, but that's partly because he just feels so hamstrung by these big editorial ideas right now. And when we just let him play with the characters without any big ideas attached, he gets it. He just gets it, and he gets it how to do it in the wake of Krakoa. Then we come to a Stephanie Phillips scene of Jean Grey, who wants to go to the Hellfire Gala, but can't break out of her space arc right now, so we've got to just keep her in space. It's a bunch of fucking nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. I hate Roy Mercado drawing Jean Grey, although he does do that one decent face up in the top corner there, but otherwise it just looks horrible. I don't know why we needed these pages. I don't think we got to learn anything or do anything, and I think it just felt weirdly out of place here. Stephanie Phillips should stop writing Jean Grey. Then we come to some more interstitial pages from Jed MacKay and Netho Diaz, and you know I love my girl Dazzler. I love this like high glam rock Dazzler singing, and she kind of turns into the main character of this, so that was really interesting to me. And this was just a gorgeous place, and I love her singing her song. I'm sure they had Jason Liu write all the songs, which poor choice. But kind of playing out over maybe Beast making a love connection when actually she's singing a classic Dazzler song that she may have written about Beast. Really great, funny beat, because Jed MacKay knows what he's doing. Then we get Jeffrey Thorne and Marcus Toe extending their run of X-Force into a couple of scenes reuniting Colossus and Magic for the first time, really, in all of the From the Ashes. And to me, this is the one that kind of made me think the hardest, because I do think Jeffrey Thorne had more to offer. And even though I hated a lot of his X-Force, I hated it because it was marketed badly and it was branded badly. The actual craft on the book started out pretty strong, and I think he just got stuck doing something that didn't really fit in with the X-Men line and wasn't really given the support and the time it needed to develop. Seeing him here getting to play with the idea of community and relationships and family between his characters, I think we lost a good voice potentially in the X-Men line. I know I said a lot of the last issues of X-Force were a disaster. I'm not trying to go back and recant that. I'm just saying that in a world where the X-Men are not so divorced from each other, and I get that that's how they had to launch the first year of the line, I understand that, but X-Men's about community. X-Men's about interconnection. The books should relate to each other, and I think we see Jeffrey Thorne getting the first chance to show that here, and just absolutely nailing it in a scene with Ileana and Piotr that is just totally perfect and really some of the best art I've seen from Marcus To. Here, I will say, colored particularly well for Fuentes Soju, so not always a bad thing. And then we get to the Gail Simone part. It just doesn't make any sense. Nobody talks how in their actual voice. It's like we've just entered a completely different comic book. I do love the continued evolution of Luciano Vecchio, but Gail Simone, come on, man. When is she going to exit the building? Her writing is just terrible, just so awful. Then we get a little sequence of Eve Ewing and Federica Manson, who's apparently going to be the alternating artist now on Extraordinary X-Men. It's fine, and I do like the 3 new characters from Extraordinary X-Men, and I do like how Federica Manson kind of maintains the look that Carmen Carnero has established for them, but this is really a nothing scene. It didn't really take us anywhere. Then we get to the scene I teased earlier in the show, 2 pages from Alex Packnell and Declan Shalvey doing these 3 Gen X characters, and to me this was so interesting because it showed off the strengths of 2 creators who I hated so much on their mainline X-Men books. Packnell writing Sentinels, he was being given a terrible idea that was no fun and had made no sense in continuity and had nobody to root for in a terrible story, when actually if you would just give him some characters who need some shine, he could have done a good job on it. Like, he's doing a decent job in the Generations X characters on the Infinity comic, and this brief 2-page scene of Banshee encountering Siren here when they've been estranged from each other and Siren has been kind of like semi-brainwashed in his captivity, it just works so well, and it just shows me, like, let Packnell write some characters who we have some affection for, please. And also it shows me that Declan Shalvey really totally misses on skin, like, way to never look at the model of the character you're about to draw. But if he's just going to draw a bunch of Irish people, he's good at that, so he draws a really great Banshee, and it just goes to show me again, Shalvey is capable of good stuff. If he's drawing stuff with somebody else scripting him, he's not a strong enough writer to write for himself as an artist, because he'll just draw whatever nonsense he wants to draw, and there's no structure to it. He's just not talented enough to do that. I'm sorry, he's not. But he's great here, and it's great to see someone else scripting for him. Then we come to Jason Liu scripting for Sarah Pichelli. Dreamy Sarah Pichelli drawing Dazzler. I love this. I love Dazzler with, like, the mod glasses and the headset mic and the silver lips. It's just so fun. And even though I skipped every word of every lyric that was out of her mouth because I don't hate myself that much, seeing Dazzler kind of like take a stand a little bit here and be willing to be a symbol of mutants, but also be a symbol of how mutants are oppressed, when she's been so hesitant to give herself over to being a mutant. She's like, I just want to be myself. I just want to be a pop star. That was actually powerful. And it shows me again, Jason Liu had good things to say with Dazzler. I think he had the wrong book with the wrong concept and bad editing, but he's a good writer. We've seen him write good other comics at Marvel. And this shows me that with better direction and with a better plot that was not, again, being held so far off to the side at arm's length from the rest of X-Men, he could have done something interesting. And then finally, we come to Mireia Aldo, also with Luciano Vecchio, and this was a fucking disaster, man. I don't know if this guy's actually any good. I think maybe he had that first arc of Storm in him all along, the way that every band often has a good first album, but I don't know if he's going to put it on any other good albums or any good singles or any good EPs, because this was really embarrassing. Other than Storm being in the Janet Jackson Rhythm Nation, people of the world today, gotta find a better way of life. Sing it! We are a part of a rhythm nation. I want to learn the actual dance because I just kind of fake Vogue to it, but there was, you know, she does it. Dun, 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 dun. Anyway, that was the Hellfire Village. So here's what I have to say about this book as a whole. The thing I have to say about as a whole is that this is the world of X-Men that I love. I'm not just here to be a hater. I'm not just here to like complain about X-Men books every week. That gives me no pleasure whatsoever. This is a franchise and characters that mean a lot to me, and I have absolutely made a part of my journey and my own identity and my life for years, right? That's why I'm here. It's because I started a website to explain how to read X-Men and collect X-Men the best way. So it gives me no pleasure when it's bad. And this book shows that if you just give us a little bit of connection, if you just let the authors just write the scenes that the characters naturally want to be a part of, the moments that they would actually say, when there's no weird never say Krakoa mandate where it's like this, you know, word that you can't say or can't talk about positively, when you let the characters interact, when you let the books cross over, that's what X-Men is. It's a shared universe of characters, of storytelling, of continuity. It's about people who are on the outside looking in, but in their own community, they're on the inside looking out. And if you only write them as outsiders and don't give them community, even in the Claremont years where they were hated and feared to the max, they always had their own internal community, and that's what made them strong. And I think it's a grave mistake to have a whole X-Men line where all they are is oppressed, all they are is outsiders, and they don't have any community with each other. We've seen times when the books have been better differentiated from each other than from the Ashes, when the books still had relations to each other. And I would point to the time after Schism as that. The books were perfectly defined. There were like 12 of them, and they absolutely did interrelate to each other. You don't have to keep the X-Men books apart to make them exciting, but you also don't all have to make them cross over for inane reasons to be exciting. So weirdly, this gave me hope because it really showed me who the good and the bad of the writers are, and it really proved to me that I kind of had made the right call on those all along, but also proved to me some of the people who turned in bad work because they were in bad circumstances. It does give me hope that after the Age of Revelation, maybe we're out of this kind of badly, exploding on the launch pad phase of From the Ashes, and from the ashes of From the Ashes, maybe there's something good still to do with the X-Men. I don't want to believe that X-Men had to end with Krakoa. I really, really think that there are glimmers, signs, portents of an X-Men line that's worth reading in this book. Okay? That was our books for the day, and that was my promised 9 minutes on X-Men. You know what? I used to do a book I used to do This Week in X with Freya, Harry, and Tyler, where we talked for an hour a week about each X-Men issue. So I could go off about X-Men, and if the X-Men books were good, I would be happy to go off about them. Okay, there's so much writing. We're just going to go bottom to top, and then we'll catch up to the end. Paul Gundam, don't know if I saw the Black Cat Omnibus released recently. Well, do you mean the Jed MacKay Black Cat Omnibus? That's been out for a while now. I would love to see a classic Black Cat Omnibus because I think that she has a really followable story that you could get all into one book. Everybody loves that Jed MacKay series. Jed MacKay is a great writer. It's kind of like broke him open into wider acclaim. It's very, very fun to read. He had a great voice for her. There were a ton of great artists on it who have now graduated to being much more headlining artists. For me, I don't know if it has the most reread capacity to it. Like, I don't know if it's the most rereadable book, but to read it once or twice, absolutely, absolutely fun. Cruel Angel saying an X-Figure PSA for anyone going after the new X-Men 97 figures. Emma Frost pre-orders are selling out. Snag Emma first if you find her available. Uh-oh. I guess I have to pre-order the Rachel, and plus I never bought that Excalibur box set from a few years back, so I'm sure that's a crazy amount of money, but I need it. Because I wanted Megan, and I have a Captain Britain already, but when they put out the Excalibur box set and there was no Rachel in it, I was like, I'm not buying that without Rachel. I'm always going to miss Rachel on the shelf, and they're never going to do her. So now, like 5 years later, they do Rachel. Now I've got to go back and look at the Excalibur. Jamie C47, writing so bad I started dancing instead of discussing it. Love it. Who knows what that was about, but love it. What was I dancing about? What was the writing so bad that I was dancing? Was it Ultimate Wolverine was I guess part of the writing was this was bad and I was dancing about this. I don't know. I just have to laugh. Okay. I also, by the way, saw the other new X-Figure announcement that in all these X-Men 97 figures, they did Rogue playing basketball Rogue, like from Jim Lee's run, where she's just got like the crop top fabric over her green bodysuit. But then Gambit, they just did him with no shirt on, which is how he looked in the comic books. But to do like a plastic Marvel Legends guy figure with no shirt on, it just looks so, it's not like they're going to like paint good detail on his chest. And when we've got him in that amazing crop top look from the X-Men 97 cartoon that became such a meme of him in his crop top, I'm like, how do you do a Legends figure with Rogue in a crop top and not put Gambit in a crop top when it got memed 1,000 times? Anyway, that just really made me laugh. The way the tone switched when we got to Simone's part and then switched again after, I'm happy it's not just me. I'm not just here to beat up on Gail Simone. Gail Simone read cool, weird stuff in her own little quarters of continuity. I just think it's a grave mistake every time they put her at the center of a universe. I think they do it because she's cool and she's got a following and she does have great ideas, but like her writing just tonally does not fit in the center ring. And I'm glad it's not just me like having that opinion and being a hater. I never just want to be a hater. I do feel that it's a tonal whiplash every time you get to a Gail Simone part of any of these jam issues of any of these X-Men things. I got to the Rachel stuff in Claremont's original run and became a fan. Yeah, I'm a huge Rachel Summers fan. Huge. Love. Cedric and Ellen saying, I think Kitty Kate would have been more like an aunt to Rachel. Yeah, well, because in the original Days of Future Past, Claremont was writing her as an aunt to Rachel that was in the concentration camp with her and had no glimmer of the idea that he would have been her big sister / maybe lover in Excalibur. That came later, so it feels weird to like retcon on that. The one thing I did like about Grand Design, with X-Men Grand Design, is that it feels like it's an X-Men recap series. But then once it gets into the past, like the 170s of Uncanny X-Men, you realize that things are subtly changing, and eventually it becomes the whole history of the Days of Future Past story instead of becoming the history of our actual X-Men story. And while that's not strictly canonical, I do like the idea that the Days of Future Past is like I don't know if that version of the X-Men's future can still happen at this point. I think not just because we're past it in real time, but it just feels like some of the key events we've missed, and it's just one of many alternate futures. But that's always been the cool idea about it, that like at some point the Senator Kelly thing happens differently and it diverges. So I think to treat it like all of X-Men continuity still runs up to Days of Future Past in a way that makes sense is actually mistaken. I don't honestly know or profess to know what the official continuity version of that is right now. I don't understand. I'm just saying that I think personally it's a mistake and you should let it be different. What figures do I buy? None, because they're so expensive here. Marvel Legends here, if you happen to run into one at a warehouse, which is our version of Target, it's just like the big store that has everything, they're literally like 55 New Zealand dollars, which is, as everything is here, more than just a conversion rate because you're paying the customs fee and everything on top of that. So yeah, I'm not rich enough. I'm making poor decisions like this right now. I don't have money to buy every wave of Marvel Legends, but yeah, from like 2015 to 2018, I bought every single wave of Marvel Legends. I had every Build-A-Figure. There's pictures of my old collection where they were all on like every shelf, hanging and climbing and like everywhere. And I loved it because I love toys. I do love toys, but at a point I just had to make a decision, and they're just too expensive to get in New Zealand. It makes me really sad, and I'm sure if I was back in the United States, I would maybe try to track them all down, but that's not happening anytime soon. But sometimes I just see one that I'm like, I love that particular character so much that I really, really do want a figure of them. James Abel said, Hellfire Vigil #1 felt like it was trying to fix From the Ashes and make it more like the Krakoan Age. I did find the storyline with Storm interesting. Okay. Let's see what else people had to say. If I missed anything, Age of Revelation, bring back Cloak and Dagger. I'm a Cloak and Dagger lover. Somewhere just off camera, I have all of my Cloak and Dagger trade paperbacks. Love, love, love it. Richard Bradley saying Princess is still in Deadpool. I've not read any since Alyssa Wrong. Yeah, the cool thing. I feel like I'm gonna sneeze again. The cool thing about this Cody Ziegler run is it's very reverent of the Alyssa Wong run. Like, it uses all of Alyssa Wong's toys. It doesn't like just pretend it didn't exist. It has Princess, it has Valentine in it, and it like builds off of that. And that's what I want. Like, if you're going to keep relaunching titles, at least let them build off of each other and don't pretend like the previous one never ever happened. James Abel saying X-Men 19, this was very different and fun to read. Revelation Bay and Warlock made a good team. I'm surprised this wasn't a one-shot and part of the main run, which I like that. X-Men always has had a bunch of random one-shot nonsense in it. It's so weird to me to like divorce that from the book and be like, it's the Doug one-shot. No, it should be part of the book. That's part of what X-Men's identity is, and I really appreciate that. Just scrolling up some more, I love how Momoko incorporates Japanese culture in the known Marvel universe. Yeah, I've reached a point of acceptance where I can say that book is not for me. It's not a bad book. I've never liked the way she panels. It doesn't mean her comic book is bad. It means it's never going to hit for me because I just don't like the way she story tells. But I do love all the cool cultural stuff. Rye Hunter, I get the feeling that Deadpool's moment in comics weirdly passed, where like the comics market itself is not as excited for a Deadpool book as it used to be. Those people have kind of become MCU fans, which is not like a you're a fan and I'm not kind of statement. I just think the excitement for Deadpool went more into multimedia because now he exists in multimedia, whereas previously when you really could only get him in a comic book or like briefly in a video game, people wanted the comic books. Just a crackpot theory of mine. But it does kind of feel like he doesn't have the same grip on the imagination of the comics market the way that it used to. Max Appleman saying Wolverine and Deadpool's #1. Yes, characters on point, art great, love the expressive Deadpool phases, fun, love. So I'm saying give the Ultimate Wolverine trade a miss. I don't know if you can trust me because here's the thing. I always say how I don't like these Ultimate Universes and I hate them. Well, you know what? Here's a 6-month experiment of me reading all of the Ultimate Universe books and you seeing in real time which one of them work for me and which one of them don't. Which ones of them? Ones don't. And why? Because I never want to just say, I hate blah, blah, blah. Like, I'll even go back and try some Jeff Lemire comics sometimes. I'll try some Peace Momoko comics. There's barely anybody who I will not go back and sample. And so, you know what? I read the 2 big Ultimate Universes, and I think I'm really liking a lot of aspects of the DC Absolute Universe. The Batman book even has me liking it now. And I think Marvel is just an utter disaster. And I think, your alternate universe needs a reason to exist other than just being cameos. Hey! And I just don't know if the Marvel Universe does. Yeah. James Abel, Deadpool's and Wolverine's so much fun. A team-up book I didn't know that I wanted. Ultimate X-Men is the only current Marvel comic I like. Well, there are books to love, but I don't know if you're counting the Star Wars books. in there. Maybe Marvel likes getting spanked by DC, and we're not going to shame them for that kink. Jamie C47, love Ultimate X-Men. The rest of my rant was great. A lot of Ultimate X-Men fans here. Only read Ultimate X-Men. Peach Momoka is one of my favorite creators. I was so excited by the potential of this book when it was first announced, talking about Ultimate Wolverine, and now, yeah. Jamie C47 saying, welcome to Wolverine, the book that clearly makes Maker look like an idiot. What's the point of this book now? It's just the 616 pretty much. Jamie C47 is the expert in summarizing my crazy rants in a way that are so short and easy to appreciate. Richard Bradley earlier said, I enjoyed the first Godzilla vs. Kong vs. Justice League series. Kong is briefly inducted into the Green Lantern Corps and Lex Luthor builds a Mecha Godzilla. It's fun. Yeah, you know, I never want to set myself up to dislike something, and I know I'm not a big Godzilla or Kong person, so it's kind of like, I don't want to go into it just to not like it, but I do like the creators a lot, so if you're telling me it's fun, maybe I'll catch up on it. I mean, I have so many other things to catch up on that, you know, might never happen. But, and then we get up to the break. It was a short show today, and that's fine, because there were less than 40 books for me to read, and I love it. A couple of final comments before we head out. Logan Wayne saying, I'm just getting into toys now. I've always wanted to get into them, but they were just too expensive for me. But somebody turned me on to the CT toys and their Mathex bootlegs. Those are good enough for me. JJ Tiffany, hello to you. Does it ever feel like Marvel and DC comic stories have kind of been played out? That most readers are getting story fatigue? I just feel like sometimes looking at all the X-Men, Batman, and Spider-Man. Well, you know, I think what's interesting is every time we start to say that, like, it's superheroes fatigue, it's story fatigue, there's nothing new to do. Then there's an absolute Wonder Woman that wins an Eisner. Then there's Batman Dark Patterns, which is like unlike any Batman book we've ever had before. Then there's this current Deadpool run, which like makes Deadpool a family man. There are new things to do with these characters. I've loved the past couple of years of Superman. I think there are so many interesting things to do with so many characters, and it just feels like DC right now is a little bit better, both in the absolute line and in their main line, at being like, show us something different. Even the books that are kind of reverent of the past, which I think Green Lantern and Green Arrow both are reverent of past story arcs, it just feels like we're getting something new and fun and different happening there in a way that excites me and energizes me. And at Marvel, it really just feels like they're very cynically playing the hits, which doesn't really work, because the hits worked like they did in a time and a place with a certain creative team for the reasons that they worked in the culture in that moment. And it's not always effective to play the hits on characters that could be growing and changing. And DC kind of like feels like they understand that right now. I don't buy figures much, Lance McNair says, but I had to get the newest Marvel Legends She-Hulk best figure I own. Yeah, I saw that. Really, really good. I do have all of the Vampirella archives, including number 10. Is that one getting hard? For a while, you could get them all on IST very easily. I think that, don't forget the fishing lore. I think they always pop back up. I don't know if they've ever like truly gone away or been totally sold out. I think Diamond would bring them back because they had them in stock, and Dynamite would like resell their stock through Diamond. I think the problem is that Dynamite had so much stock at Diamond, and now it's all up in the air, so there's no way for them to resolicit the things that they typically would resolicit. I got to get through these best comics of 2025 so far stream, which hopefully is going to happen in the next 2 days, but you never know what crazy stuff is going to happen to me in my week. But once I do, I have, fun fact, backstage lore, ever since I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I really got attracted by the idea of talking about all of my favorite runs of all time. So I started walking around my house and finding all of the comic books in every room and every bookshelf and making a list of all of the collected editions that I own, not on a book by book nature, but like in a, what runs do I have that I've kind of forgotten about? Things that have just been lying around that I've been reading, that may need to read, you know, Milestone, ROM, all of this Valiant, Marvel Masterworks that I've never necessarily read. So it started out 300 books, then it got to 400, 500. Not just books, they're runs. They're runs anywhere from a 3-issue run to a 250-issue run, although I tried to top out around 100. And then I made a custom algorithm, and I had it rank and sort them for me based on all the stuff. And so the next off-access extra show I'll do after I do the comic series of 2025 so far is I'm going to finally do a show about all of the runs that I'm dying to read, and it's going to be live, so you can all talk about it too. And before the show actually happens, I'm going to ask you to name some of your favorites so I know what they are and I can talk about where they fit on my list. And then we're going to read some runs. We're going to read some not current comic books. Finally, finally. Lance McNair's tempted to buy the Vampirella archives, but probably shouldn't right now. I would want to get all of them. They are reissuing them in paperback ever so slowly, so you could start picking those up. Okay, I think we've reached the end, my friends, which is fine because it was a short week. So look, there's going to be another stream this week, and I keep hearing you say the YouTube notifications don't always tell you when I go live. I don't have any control over that. I don't even know how it works. I never get YouTube notifications. But if you want to be notified when there's another live video, click on the YouTube notifications. It helps when you hit live and like on this video. Like, there's definitely usually more viewers than likes, and I know I should probably say this earlier, but I just, I'm here to talk about comics and to talk to you. I'm not here to do this whole like and subscribe dance all the time, but it's helpful. When you like the video, it's helpful because it continues to recommend it, and that's how we find new friends to play with in future weeks of the video. So I will be back probably one time this week. Let's hope. Who knows? Life might be crazy. Life might be crazy. I might decide to go to the adventure ropes course by myself and just do it again just for the fun of it. You never know what I'm going to do with my days here. But I think there's going to be another stream this week, so tune in for that. I don't know if there's going to be more catching up this week, so I think we might hold at about 4 weeks behind for a little bit more. But next week, I'm going to be on Near Mint Condition talking about all of the Marvel announcements. And I hear from Omar there's only like 2 or 3 left, I think. So we've almost got the full slate of Marvel omnibuses that are going to be coming out through next July. And there's some big whoppers in there. Some huge, huge books. So that'll be in 2 weeks. And then after that is Jamming on Comics. And then after that, I'll be celebrating the 25th anniversary of Crushing Crisis with hopefully some cool streams there as well. So, every week I sign off with my Trans Lives Matter and talking about rights and being kind to people. And I want to get into something I got into in the comments last week with somebody. And forgive me, I forget if it was, I forget of my 2 Australian friends who it was, or if it was somebody else. So forgive me. But part of why I got back onto YouTube is there's so many voices out here spouting hate, both about comics and about other people, that I think everybody, every creator at every level, whether you could have 1 million listeners on your podcast or whether you're just somebody with a couple hundred viewers, I think it's just good to be out there and being like, love people, respect people, let people have the identities they want to have. They all matter. And that's not me saying all lives matter. It's that everybody's individual, Black lives matter, trans lives matter, lives matter. And so part of why I wanted to come back on YouTube, I'm a busy girl. I could be doing a lot of other stuff with this time right now, right? I could be doing way more CK updates and just read the comics and not do as many notes and save all the images and stuff. But I wanted to come back and do this on YouTube, not only to have a relationship with all of you who I get to see on all these other channels that I do streams on, because I just think it's important to have people out there in the world passionate about the things they love and the things they hate, but also passionate about everybody mattering. So that is a huge part of why I'm here. And I say again and again, this is a political show. It's not about politics, but I will always be political because I think existing, and I hate that existing with thinking that everybody matters right now is a political stance, but it is. And I think every one of us needs to be out there, whether we're tweeting to an audience of 5, well, hopefully not tweeting, hopefully blue skying because we're not on Twitter anymore, or whether we have a massive, massive platform on something like a podcast network or YouTube. The more we say it and we normalize that the normal thing is to respect all people and love all people, and to, even if we don't understand the choices they're making about their identities and who they are, that we respect that. If we normalize that, then the other thing becomes weird again. And we've allowed that other thing to get too normal. And so I love comic books. I love and want the best for all of you. And I want you to treat the people in the best in your world that you can. So go out there and love yourself and then love everybody else. And even if you don't love them, and gosh knows there's plenty of people that this guy doesn't love, at least let's respect them for who they are and evaluate them on the merits of their actions rather than any kind of judgment that we're passing about them. So until next time, with those very, very heavy words, I'm going to say, please, whether I'm back tomorrow or a week from now, don't have a crisis. Unless, of course, it's me.